bags last night, free flight. 0 hour, 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss her so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. And I think I'm gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round and into fight. I'm a man to think I am, I know. No, 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 no. I'm a rockin' man, burning out his fuse up here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round and into fight. I'm a man to think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. I'm a rockin' man, burning out his fuse up here alone. Mars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell. And there's no one there to raise them if you did. And all the science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. Rocket man, rocket man. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round and into fight. Another man to think I am at home. But no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, nice rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Touchdown brings me round and into fight. Another man to think I am at home. But no, no, no. I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse up here alone. This is the way. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Oh, no way.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. Dude, yes. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. There you go for Lord High Fixer. Lord High Fixer, you stream rocket launches? Like real rocket launchers, or like the ones that you like, the testers model kits that you build and hit the button and they shoot?
Probably like the Dragon that just came back from the space station, I think.
Oh, right. Real ones.
Real ones.
Dig that, dude. Yeah. So your show is like your show is rocket launches and stuff.
Indeed, the show is rocket launches and stuff, especially tonight. Welcome in, everybody. You can see above me, they have two shots going. One is of the exterior of Crew Dragon and the interior shot of the astronauts getting strapped into the first ever 4-person capsule launch in history. You can see over on that side over there, this is the first fully certified launch of Crew Dragon. It's actually Dragon 2. It will fly on top of Falcon 9 Block 5. You will have Mission Commander Michael S. Hopkins, Pilot Victor Glover, Specialist, Mission Specialist Shannon Walker, and JAXA Specialist Soichi Noguchi, who has the distinction of joining a very special club tonight. Assuming this launches. There have only ever been 2 astronauts who have flown on 3 vehicles. Wally Schirra, who flew Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, and John Young, who's my favorite astronaut ever, and he flew on Gemini, Apollo, and he flew the shuttle twice, including its maiden voyage, its test flight, the 2 crew member test flight of the original shuttle. So he'll fly, Soichi Noguchi would fly on the shuttle. He flew back when the shuttle was servicing the ISS on, I believe it was 2425 or 2223. And he flew on Soyuz. So this would be the 3rd distinct vehicle. He's also the first international astronaut to fly on a commercial space system that takes astronauts to space, which is significant. So a couple things about the rocket tonight. It is booster 1061, which if you go look for history, there is none, because this is its maiden flight. This one's never flown before. And there's a special thing going on with the engines. So they had to take 2 of the Merlins off the rocket after a previous GPS launch. They discovered they had a problem. SpaceX did. There's a paint thinner like lacquer that's used to seal a very 65mm valve, and the company responsible for applying that lacquer, which is basically to prevent an oxidizer from stripping things away, the company didn't have a good enough process to remove the excess lacquer, and so when that GPS launch took off, it actually caused was getting ready to take off. It caused a flight abort. So they actually removed 2 of the engines from this rocket, and then they reattached 2. It was one of the reasons there's been a delay here. Originally, this was supposed to take off around Halloween, and it got pushed 2 weeks into November. So that's where we stand tonight. So the concerns tonight, as we continue to see above me the crew getting strapped in, they're going to go through comm checks next. The concern here is weather, which we'll go have a more close-up look at in just a moment. But weather is the concern for launch. Downrange looks great. It looks absolutely great for launch tonight. So the at the pad weather is the concern. One is you'll hear me say the term field mill or ground static potential sensors, because there's simply some weather. You can kind of see it starting to manifest over Florida a little bit and moving east. The static potential of a storm. The rocket cannot fly through precipitation at all. So if there's rain at the time of launch, they will scrub. And they are also concerned about high cumulus. John Dennisbrucker said earlier that they're going to launch another weather balloon. He didn't say when it was going to go up. As soon as they post that they have done that and come back with a result, I'll obviously say something about it. But we have about 2 hours and 30 minutes before launch. It is an instantaneous launch window tonight, and that means that the rocket must launch at the very specific time it's supposed to launch. There can be no holds. There can be nothing that delays it. If there is a delay of any kind, they will scrub, and there would be a reschedule for Wednesday night. I don't have the time, but it would be another evening launch. Yeah, so as Gilly said in chat, it cannot hold at all, or it scrubs. So, with that said, let's go have a closer look at the weather. So you can see that the cloud cover is what it is off the Florida coast right now. There's a lot of thick cumulus sitting there right off the pad. That has to clear enough for the launch to take place. The storm system itself, you can kind of see it beginning to develop. We'll keep our eye on it. Obviously, SpaceX will say stuff as they go through the launch process as well. Again, there can be no ground precipitation. There can be no potential for static discharge on the ground. All precautions we kind of ran through with DM2. Remember, DM2 scrubbed it on its first attempt because of a field mill sensor and precipitation. And then they launched, 2 days later, and they were at a 60-40 against odds that day, and they still got off the ground. I remember being actually pretty shocked that thing took off that day. So we'll see. The mission will take... If it launches tonight, we'll take the astronauts to the International Space Station, arriving sometime tomorrow evening. I don't have the specific time, but it's not the express route. They're not going to be super fast travelers to the ISS like DM2 was. And assuming we launch tonight, I do have the patch for this mission ready to go. And they commented on it earlier before people came in. This is the Crew 1 mission patch. It's a very cool patch. You can see along the bottom, you can see the symbol for the shuttle, Apollo, Gemini, Mercury. Along the top, you can see the silhouette of the International Space Station, which is right up along here. I have a spot open on the patch board, which is behind me and behind the green screen. Assuming we launch tonight, I will take the green screen down. You'll be able to see me put the patch up. I just had to remove one of my own Challenger patches from it, which went to my reserve wall, which is aerospace patches. What's up, Berlin? Yeah, it's a big patch. I was actually surprised by how big it was, but if you compare it to, say, the Orion patch or the Ares patch, it's big. And that's a program patch right there, and that's a big patch. Now, if you compare it to the NASA Meatball patch, which is the official size, it dwarfs it. So, is it a patch from the Challenger mission? No, that patch stays up. That patch will never come off the wall, nor will Apollo 1, nor will STS-125. Those stay up. They'll never come off the wall. It's just, I believe it's Challenger's second flight I took down. Oh, Berlin, go look for you guys who may be interested in patches. The official supplier of NASA is a company called AB Emblem, which is who I buy my patches from because I know they're made the same way. Yeah, it's almost the size of the Artemis patch, which is also big. We can walk through some of the patches later if you guys want. Yeah, honoring those who gave their lives in a dream of space flight and exploration. Exactly, those are why those 3 patches never come off the wall. They're at the bottom of the wall. The International Space Station patch is at the top of the wall. We'll get to take a closer look at it later. I know that you guys have never really walked through the wall with me. I maybe have a patch problem. I have a lot of patches. Lots and lots of patches. Lots of them. But anyway, let's go back to big screen and bring the audio back up from the current activities going on for preparation to launch this evening. And I'll bring audio up and try to balance it out with me here. Maybe they're not talking. Maybe I didn't unmute the tab here. Let's reload the tab. I'm pretty sure I did. Let's go and bring them back up. They're just not talking. Or we don't have audio. One of the two is happening. Let me see if the other stream has it, because NASA has 2 feeds for this.
Dragon, nope. SpaceX, ComCheck over ground stations.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. Have you loud and clear on ground station.
So you guys tell me how that compares to my voice.
I've got you loud and clear. Ground station ComCheck complete. Stand by for TDRS ComCheck.
TDRS is a telemetry system that tracks everything around the launch site. Cool. If it's about the same level, then I'll drop them a little bit. Okay. So let's talk milestones tonight before we get into other things. Right now they're in the middle of comm checks, which
Dragon, SpaceX, ComCheck over TDRS.
Was scheduled to start at 5:07 p.m. Eastern Time, so they're ahead of schedule. They will verify their seats are ready for rotation because the seats have to.
Well. ComCheck complete.
Once they're all
for ComChecks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Once they're all secured, they will actually have to rotate the seats for launch position. And then after that, I have this huge checklist next week, so there's no way I can remember this. They will do suit lead checks at 5:13. They will close the hatch at 5:32 p.m. The bring your kids to the table to watch time is about 6:45 p.m. It will be in the middle propellant load, launching the arming system. Things will start to happen pretty rapidly at that point. So we are about an hour and 40 minutes from now.
MD, this is Dragon. Loud and clear on Dragon to ground.
Copy, loud and clear. Standing by for ComChecks with LD.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1, ComCheck.
LD, this is Dragon on countdown 1. Have you loud and clear.
Seat conditions are good.
Stand by for ComChecks over Dragon to ground. LD on Dragon to ground, ComCheck.
And LD, this is Dragon. Have you loud and clear on Dragon to ground.
LD, loud and clear. Good luck, Resilience crew.
So according to 45th Weather Squadron, right now,
Copy and thank you.
most current forecast is
Okay, Resilience.
scattered showers in
that
the
concludes our
vicinity of
launch
Kennedy
configuration comm checks.
at the time of launch.
Please report
Winds will
when you are
only
ready
be
for
about 5 miles
station
per hour.
for
That's
section
not a
2
problem at
of
all.
4.100.
Dragon copies and inward.
So it's just a matter of there not being precipitation. What? Random question. What was the name you gave the thing for Flight Simulator 2020 that gives you missions for it?
And sounds like we just completed comm checks.
I
Sounds like
can't remember off the
everything
top of my
is
head. Gilly, I
good to
installed
go.
it.
So we're gonna head back over to KSC with Marie.
I'll look it up after.
We are now getting an up-close look at a full-scale mock-up of Crew Dragon. And Kate, the astronauts are sitting inside a Crew Dragon that's very much like this one. Can you kind of give us a layout of what we're looking at here?
Yeah. So this is an exact replica, a 1-to-1 scale of Crew Dragon. So you can kind of see size-wise the amount of room that our four crew members have to move around. While this isn't the exact training module that they use to train in, as I've mentioned before, our crew trains at SpX extensively prior to flight. They use a mock-up similar to this one for things very detailed, such as running procedures inside the capsule, but also something as simple as practicing getting in and out, going through the side hatch. Especially in a spacesuit, that could be a little clunky. Nicole, you flew on shuttle twice. I'm sure you had training in modules similar.
We did, and you know what's really exciting for crew members is once you start doing a lot of training in the mock-ups, you know you're close to flying in space, so you really get excited about that. I don't know, I look at this and it's really neat to me to be just up close and personal with, even with a mock-up of the spacecraft. But, you know, I look at it and there's things that are certainly familiar, like a window. Thankfully, there's windows. But what is some of the other stuff we're seeing on here? These, you know, these silver little ovals.
Outputs you see oriented at different places. Those are the Draco thrusters.
What else are we looking at here?
So these are the ports for our Draco thruster system. As I've mentioned before, Dragon is capable of steering itself in space, and that onboard propulsion system is here. These are the Draco thruster ports that are utilized during in-flight and orbit maneuvers. Over here on the side, we have the Super Draco system, which is basically a super-powered high-flow system, and those are only utilized in an abort scenario. So we talked a little bit about escape.
No, Kate Tice is a super smart engineer.
Be firing on a nominal day.
I mean, there are obvious reasons why they have selected her to present a television show
if necessary.
But
and we just heard
she
the
is
call
a
for
super
seat
gifted
rotation.
engineer. She's a graduate of Purdue who's produced
their seats
a
are being
lot of
rotated into
astronauts.
position
More
for
astronauts
launch.
than any other university
So
come
we are
from
going
Purdue.
to send it over to NASA's Daryl Nail. He is at the OSB-2 viewing location.
So you'll
with
see
Kennedy
that
Center
this is
Director
the top
Bob
row
Cabana.
with
Daryl?
all 4 seats. The 2 bottom row seats are out, as Crew Dragon can carry 6, but NASA will never take 6. They will only ever maximize it 4.
Here, Bob, and this is the Kennedy interview desk, and we are in the shadow of a little bit of cool hardware ourselves, the vehicle assembly building, which looks outstanding.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got a new.
It's a good sunset shot.
We repainted the flag and the NASA meatball and the sides of it. We got it all spiffed up for this history-making day.
Excellent.
You know, it's another great day at Kennedy Space Center, America's premier multi-user spaceport. We're making history.
You like to talk about
that guy trying to sell us insurance.
Licensed launch of Crew to the International Space
Worm logo is also my favorite.
Why is that important for Kennedy?
Well, it's important because we're trying to establish a commercial economy in low Earth orbit. All right.
Yes, let's talk about that for a moment. Commercial economy in
By us
space.
flying crews to the International Space Station.
There was about 2 weeks ago.
Licensed flight. It opens up
There
the
was
door
a
for
statement made by Elon Musk that stated Earth's
So I saw
laws
you
did
down
not
there,
govern
the crew
what would
getting out and
happen
they're
on
walking out
Mars,
there.
and
Yeah,
if they
they're
got
very
there
excited.
first, they would make their own laws. To which the rest of the spacefaring world was like, what?
Well, hey, listen, I mean, you've been to space
Because
4
it's
times,
commonly
so you
accepted
understand what
that
these folks
anything
are
outside
going
the
through
atmosphere
right
is
now.
governed by international
These suits
maritime
are
law.
articulating up. You can see
So
it moving
Elon Musk
right
was
now, Bob,
effectively
as they
challenging
get
that
into
he
position
would be
there. This must be a
obliged
moment
to
where it kinda gets
obey
real.
any sort of regulations on Mars if he got there before a government entity.
Is that the moment it clicks?
Yeah, exactly what Gilly just said. Commercial economy in space is the new Wild West. Science fiction will start to become science fact in that domain. With the Expanse being a great example, you have this situation where companies, we all know how ethically bound companies are, but companies will have access to resources they never had before, and I'm sure, I'm positive that they won't exploit that in any way.
man, it just gets up and goes. That acceleration, that
People
force
don't
pushing
own
you back
stars.
from the
People
seat,
have named
it's
stars.
something else. And so, not knowing what that's going to be like, there's a
I
little
mean,
bit of anticipation.
and in
You know,
some
when you go a
alternate
second,
reality
third time, you
case,
get
I'm
a
sure
little more
Firefly
idea
is
what to
real.
expect, and you can
If you
relax
believe
a little
in,
bit
you know,
more. But so
infinite quantum
there's anticipation.
parallel
What is
realities.
this going to be like? What is this going to feel like?
And you would think there's some nerves there, right? Just naturally.
That,
in
man,
this
I mean,
moment.
it's not far fetched to
But
think
these
that.
four
It's
astronauts,
hundreds
they
of years
also
away
did
if we ever
extremely
do
well.
say,
So
hey,
I
let's
hope
actually
that the
do
nerves don't
something
get
on
them
Mars and
too
stop
much.
talking
They
about
ate well
sending
because they're
robots
at the
there.
astronaut crew quarters.
But
We've been hosting
it is
them
a
for the past
resource
week.
race.
And tell me about what they got to eat.
It's all about
anything they wanted.
resources, right? You have the situation where
On the menu,
the
whatever you
space
want. I
around
heard, like,
Earth
New
in
York
Leo
steak,
orbit
basmati
is a
rice,
resource right
whatever,
now, and
some
it's
dressings,
rapidly
no, life in
shrinking
crew
because of all
quarters
these
is good.
constellations that are
With
going
the,
up.
there's one crew,
The-
we used to have
the-
a motto.
The
crew
amount of
quarters.
space that
Eat till you're
is
sleepy and
in
sleep
use
till it's
for
time you're hungry.
Leo purposed
That's a good way to
spacecraft
lead. I'm surprised
is
you can get them out
ridiculous.
there to get on the
There's a
rocket
lot
for
of
that kind
junk
of living.
or
So,
potential
that's why
junk
you
up
don't
there.
want to spend too much time in crew
And that
quarters.
is a resource
But
that's going to
it's-
continue
we do,
to
a
evaporate
great
on
job
us
of
as a
protecting our
planet.
astronauts from,
And then the next thing is
keeping
the
them healthy.
moon, which
But,
they have now
it's all
found
about-
water
it's-
not just on the
it's just
poles
amazing
on. There's
what we
actually
do.
traces
You
of
know, I would trade
molecularized
places with
water
any
all
one
over the
in a
place on the
heartbeat.
moon.
I'm
That came out,
I'm
you
really
know,
proud of these guys,
week and a half,
and
2
I'm
weeks
proud
ago.
of what we've accomplished
So,
as a nation. To
as you
have this
proceed
commercial
further
crew
out,
program.
get to Mars,
Kathy
which
Leaders
is the
and her
next
team have
logical
just done an
destination. Some people want to say
outstanding
Venus.
job getting it, you know,
okay.
getting Bob and Doug Hurley up there.
But at some
and
point,
home
you reach
safely,
another body,
paving
the
way
asteroid
for
belt will be
this
after
first,
Mars, and all these things are
flight under
resources.
contract with
Life on the
SpaceX.
moon was
You
possible
know, this is
before,
the
you just have to
future.
supply it, and
we
there's
wanna
not enough
get
water
Boeing
to
flying,
sustain
too.
life
They're
there.
right over here building the CST-100.
But
We got to have them have a
commercializing
successful flight so that
space,
we have
as
the
everyone's
similar
super excited
redundancy so
about
we can get
at
crews to and
NASA
from
and
the
especially
International Space
SpaceX
Test launch
and
right around the
ULA,
corner,
etc.
next year in
There's a
2021.
risk
Bob,
to
man,
it
thanks so much
because
for being here.
when
Appreciate your
companies
insight
start
as
becoming the
always.
governing
Thanks for having me,
agents
Daryl.
of
Flew into
what we
space 4
use
times,
space
folks.
flight
So
for,
between me and him, we have
the
4 flights
purpose
into space.
shifts
There you go.
from
We'll send it back to you guys
benevolent
to hear.
medical research, such as what Canadarm2 did,
Thank you so
to
much. So
let's
right now
make
we've got about
vaccines for stuff in
300,000 people
space, and then
tuning in
because it
across
was made
all
in
of our social
space,
channels.
we'll
That's
charge
about
you
100,000
ridiculous
more from when we
amounts
last
for it.
checked in.
Um,
And ladies, I am seeing
There
some
needs to
great
be
comments
significant
coming in
regulation
online,
on
and I've
a
got a few I
commercial
wanna
space
show you.
economy, and no
So
one's talking
this
about
first
that right
one
now.
is, she says, I've always heard NASA astronauts talk about steak and eggs for breakfast, but this is the first time I've heard of curry rice. Love this.
This is
and
important
just a
information.
huge thank you to astronaut Soichi for sharing this tradition with us. And let's
The
take a look
astronaut
at
meals
another
are
one.
basically whatever they want. You could have lobster
So we've got this user saying this is like watching Apollo
because they're going to spend the
11.
next
This will
210
make
days eating,
history,
you know,
and a private
vacuum sealed,
company sending humans to
prepared,
space
you know,
with a
upgraded
reusable
versions of
rocket.
MREs.
The future is now. So, and again, Marie, people have been super curious about what the zero gravity indicator is going to be on today's flight. I was wondering if you could maybe give us a hint.
Okay, so I know what it's going to be. Nicole knows. I think Kate might know. We're not allowed to say yet.
So they're
but
talking
I
about
can tell
the
you to
zero
keep your
G
eye
indicator,
out.
which
It
has
will make
historically
an
been a stuffed
appearance
animal
at some point,
of some kind,
but it's
that they
a
let it float
surprise.
around the
It's special.
Either
capsule
way,
so
have
that
to tune
company
in.
could sell a whole
So,
bunch more to stuffed animals.
And ladies, we're hearing about the larger crew size in the capsule today, and I think that's super fun to think about of those at home. So I think we're
I
going to
miss
pose the
MREs,
question
man.
to the public to
Cheese
see how
tortellini
big
cold.
is their dream space
That was my
crew.
jam.
And we'll make this a poll, and so I'll share the results with you later on in the show. But Nicole,
How big
you're
is
the
your
only
dream
one up here
space
that's actually
crew?
been to space and on a few different crew sizes. Do you have a preferred
How big
number?
is your dream space crew, chat?
Well, 6 seemed to be the number for me. And
maximum
I think
crew
if I could add
complement
my
on
family
ISS is
members on
7.
top of that would be outstanding.
Which was
I
also
agree,
happened to
and
be the
with
maximum crew complement of the shuttle.
Oh, yes.
So ladies, over the past month, we've also been asking users on social media to show us how they're getting excited for today's launch, and we've received some amazing submissions from around the world. Take a look at these.
3, 2, 1, 0.
How are you getting ready for launch today, apart from hanging out with your friends? That's cool. That's cool. You could have printed out a boarding pass for this. I posted that a couple weeks ago. Getting ready by getting ready to hang a patch on the wall, and this thing takes off. That was an abort.
And SpaceX Crystal Dragon, you show a nominally check.
We're gonna have 7 astronauts in space. There currently are 3. Well, there's 1 astronaut and 2 cosmonauts. Oh, sorry, that was my alarm to make sure I started streaming. There are 2 cosmonauts and 1 astronaut on ISS right now. You did miss your
there
flight.
you have it. People from around the world are just engaged with this launch.
All right, thanks to Hira, and thanks to all of you following along. Keep sending us your submissions, how you're watching. We love seeing those. So we had seat rotation and comm checks, and we want to learn a little bit more about
didn't
the
even show
crew
seat
before
rotation.
we get into
PG.
hatch closure. This will be the second space flight.
5.2 at 4.100. We are ready for Dragon hatch closure.
So they're going for hatch closure
so we
now,
just heard the call.
which is a 5:32:17 p.m. They're way ahead of schedule.
Okay, so we heard the call that they're ready.
They're
for hatch
17 minutes
closure.
ahead of schedule right now.
So we're going to pause for just a moment.
Yeah, actually cover this stuff going on the spacecraft. That would be nice. Instead of what's going on Twitter, we can all go look there on our own.
So if you've been following along, we actually heard the call out and saw seat rotation happen just, I think it was a couple of minutes earlier than
I sat in
we had
gas
our
masks that
timeline.
have that similar composition to the material that are those bags they're wearing over their head
so hatch closure is coming up, but in the meantime,
particle
we want
containment.
to learn a little bit
And
more
those things
about,
are
Crew Dragon
nasty when you
Commander
take them
Mike
off.
Hopkins. He is a U.S. Air Force
No, they do
colonel,
not have
and
17
here's
minutes
a
to
little bit
hold
more about
rocket.
the Missouri native who's
Cannot
already
hold
logged
at all during this countdown.
166 days in
There's a
space.
hold, they scrub. An instantaneous launch window. Yep. Burley knows what I'm talking about. Those mop masks, oh boy. Those things were soaked when I took them out. Yeah, they're 17 minutes ahead. But if they have a problem, they have 17 minutes to work it and still stay on time, but they cannot
that you're
hold.
always thinking about, right? That's one of the more critical phases of the flight, as you can imagine. You're very focused in, right? It can be a very emotional.
But there are two military officers on board. There's
You're kind of pinching yourself.
captain
because
and
it's hard to believe.
captain in the a colonel in the Air Force, which is the equivalent to a captain in the Navy, and then there's a Navy commander on board, and that's, I believe, how they figured out who's in charge here. Alright, we'll be here.
On the International Space Station, introducing
There's
NASA
something hanging
astronaut
off my
Mike
back. It's driving me crazy
Hopkins.
because you can see it right here. So there's your mission commander, Mike Hopkins.
You know, it's funny. I mean, a lot of times people think of the dream of being an astronaut as something that a kid would have. And I remember when my wife and I first started dating at the University of Illinois, and I told her that I wanted to be an astronaut. She laughed at me and kind of said, "Are you serious?" But at the same time, she stuck with me throughout the years, and to have that dream come true is pretty amazing. My role on the Crew Dragon itself, as part of Crew 1, is the commander.
So you saw
of the
Elon
vehicle.
Musk in that picture. It was announced
We'll be launching to the
within the
International
past few
Space
days that
Station,
he
and
tested
we're gonna be
positive for
doing
COVID
a
twice and then
long-duration
negative
mission, a
twice because they
standard
did a bunch of rapid
long-duration
fire
mission.
tests, and that's normal for rapid fire tests to come up with positive.
One of the
negatives.
nice things about being on
and
board
he
the
was
International
kind of
Space Station is
challenging
you have a lot
whether
of
he had COVID or not.
connectivity, believe it or not, with your
And he
family.
posted
So
earlier that
I was
at
able to
this point he's
call
accepted
just about
that he
every
has
day.
COVID and he's not on site.
My family means everything to me. It is the most important part of my life. My wife Julie, my son Ryan, my son Lucas, they are just such a huge part of this whole endeavor. You know, without family, it just wouldn't be as meaningful.
So if those of you who haven't caught it during the stream as well, the capsule has a name already. It's called Resilience.
With SpaceX, it's pretty powerful.
You'll remember that the
bring
DM2
a
capsule
lot
was
to the
named
table.
Endeavour.
NASA brings a lot to the table. We've got a ton of experience in human spaceflight,
Which was an
When you're
homage
out
to
there
the
on a
shuttle
day-to-day
that
basis,
the
and
astronauts
you're
on
interacting
DM2
with
flew
their
on the
engineers, and
most.
You're interacting with their trainers, and you're interacting with the people that are actually building the rockets and building the capsule itself. You really get to establish the relationships, the personal relationships.
T-minus 2 hours,
It's not just about the
8
astronauts
minutes
that are on
and
board,
counting.
but it's about the entire team at NASA and SpaceX that it's taken to launch.
I'm
this
sure at
Falcon
some
vehicle.
point in here, Gilly,
And we
someone
can
will name
build
an
that.
Enterprise, one of these capsules Enterprise. I mean, all of the capsules and LEMs had names.
Rise up and join the fight.
Seated next to Mike Hopkins is Crew Dragon.
The funny thing about the
pilot
LEM,
Victor
it was not
Glover,
officially
who
called the
has
LEM
flown on
at
40
one
different
point in the
types of
development
aircraft
for
a
Grumman, but they just
total of more
refused to
than
call it LM.
3,000 hours. Helping
But you
prepare
can see
him for
LMP,
this,
Lunar
piloting
Module
his
Pilot. It's
first
called the
test
Lunar
flight to
Module, but
space.
it's
Here's more
constantly
about the
referred to as
US
LEM,
Navy
which was the
commander
Lunar
and California
Excursion
native.
Module. And NASA decided they didn't want people thinking that the astronauts are going out there
I
having
saw a shuttle
fun.
launch
Hence the word
when I was
excursion.
in elementary school. And I thought I really want to fly that. And that's where
Great
it
shot of
began.
Atlantis on its roll maneuver.
He is a Navy commander, a naval aviator, and a test pilot. He was selected as an astronaut in 2013. This is his first space flight.
He's the pilot.
Introducing NASA astronaut
Tested F-18s.
Victor Glover.
The Super Hornet. The Growler. Flew 20 plus combat missions.
First and foremost, I'm just grateful to God and to my family. To work and live in space is just a humbling and amazing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
blessing in
Berlin.
and
It's
of
like
itself. This is a test pilot's dream.
everyone who flew those missions were mission focused. I mean, some of those guys
Flying
became
has been such an
geology
important part of my
specialists when they had no
professional life,
background
and
in
I
it.
love to do it.
At the end of the day, they all got one shot to walk on the moon. There's an element of fun to that.
And so to get to a point beyond that, that'll be a little special moment. I'm a rookie astronaut. I'm the pilot and going to be learning the ropes from a very experienced crew. Trying to balance that, enjoying and living in the moment, but also managing the responsibilities to make sure that we get to space safely. I'm looking forward to
That's
that
him doing pre-flight on T-35.
juxtaposition of emotion, I think.
Tell me about how you ended up here. I think for every astronaut, that's kind of a different story.
Ooh, wow, that goes way back. So high school athlete, loved being a part of a small high-performing team, wrestling and football. Was fortunate to wrestle in college while pursuing my engineering education. I actually originally wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That's what started my journey in the Navy, and I wound up deciding to go into aviation and learn to fly. The love of flying and being a part of a small, very
Super Hornet's
specialized,
such a cool
high-performing
plane.
team that gets to do things in really interesting and challenging environments. The astronaut corps is the epitome of that.
The view on astronauts has changed.
This is truly an
How do you
exciting
mean,
time
Manning?
for,
I don't
human
believe.
spaceflight
I would need my
aviation.
memory jog.
And believe me, it's only going to get better.
The
as we
question
charge
is,
off
I
into
talked
the
on a
future.
previous stream how the view on astronauts
We've been
has
working
changed.
with our partner SpaceX for years.
I think
it's been it's just been amazing to learn.
I don't
about
recall the
vehicle,
conversation, but
and to just spend
astronauts
time getting to know
were
their flight
all
control
test
team and their
pilots
trainers.
up to a
It's
point.
creating sort of a new culture.
The
that
original
is
Mercury
some
7 were
kind
test
of a
pilots. The
balance
new
between
9,
the
which
two.
were the Gemini astronauts, were all test pilots. They didn't
The fact that it
bring
takes thousands of people
anybody else
all over the
into
world to
like
get us
from
ready.
an
It's
engineering
humbling and
perspective
overwhelming,
until
and I want to
Apollo.
do my best because I represent them. So thank you for your
Buzz
support,
Aldrin
for
was
your
an
love,
engineer
and know that you're
first.
flying with us on
He also was a pilot, but he was an engineer. But there was always this cowboy buckaroo feel to the old school astronauts, and at some point
Okay, so
after
while we were in
after
that
Skylab,
video, we saw
the focus
hatch
became more
close.
about
We have not
no
heard
one's
the
really
confirmation of the
flying
hatch
that much
close. We're
anymore.
not
The
expecting
shuttle
that
had
until
trained
T-minus
pilots
1
because
hour,
there were
55
manual
minutes. So
maneuvers,
we're
but no
still
one's really
almost
flying
10
these
minutes away
crafts
from
anymore.
that. But even though the hatch appears to be closed, there's a process
NASA-
to
NASA has a
completing this
messaging
making
and
sure
marketing
that,
issue with respect to the
it's
astronauts being
sealed and there's no
superstars
leaking.
because
So Kate, can you
they
kind of
don't
explain what the crew
want
is
to
doing
make it
now,
about the
during
astronauts.
this
I actually
hatch
think that was
closure
their failing when I was a kid because it was all about
said, it's
the
not quite
astronauts.
as
That's what you
simple
saw.
as closing
There was
your car
astronauts in
door.
your face.
Of course, they're having to
They
make
didn't
sure
emphasize the
that
fact
everything
that
is in place.
they're
There will
engineers
actually
and
be a seal
technicians
that
and the
is
people you see on the
inflated to
screen right
ensure,
now that
that
all have a
of
part
the-
to play in
basically
getting people
that
into
it is
space.
watertight.
And I didn't think
if it's
about
watertight, it'll
like
get to
aeronautic
space.
or
So we see
aeronautic
the
or,
crew-
or
excuse me,
any
the
sort of
closeout
astrophysics
text,
or
the suit
engineering of any
text,
kind that could have
all
put me in the
there in
control
their
center in
numbered
NASA
uniforms, going through the
until I was
steps. You
well
can see
past the
the
point where I could have
tablets in their
started down that
hands.
path.
Those are our electronic
Yeah,
procedures.
Chris
or
Hadfield's a fighter pilot.
e-procedures, and they are essentially stepping through each one
That's
to
a
make sure
that's
that
not NASA's problem.
giving verbal cues saying that it's
Make
complete,
it sexy.
we are good.
I don't
And
I don't
we're
agree
basically
that we
just
should
counting through the
hype
process,
it. I don't think that
step
this
by
should be
step,
hyped
getting
at all.
closer to,
We have a
launch
society
time,
that,
which
that
at this point
indulges
we're
that
just a mere
impulse in
2
people.
hours and 3 minutes away from.
The people who care, especially the kids who care,
Nicole, what
the
was
ones
it
we're
like
trying to
when
reach
you were
here,
sitting inside the space shuttle
there has to be a
when
vested
that
interest
moment
beyond
when,
the 30 seconds
you
it
know,
takes
that
for a rocket
last
to take off.
door to the
Quite frankly,
outside
if all you're interested in is watching
You know,
the
I think it's
engines
like
light
all the steps
and
we've
the
been
rocket
talking
go up,
along the way.
you're missing
It's another one
99% of what's going
wow,
on
this
here.
could be real today steps. And that is certainly one that makes you think it's going to happen. You're at
So I
that
think
point, you know
NASA
the
has to
closeout
get a
crew is
message
getting
out.
ready to depart the pad,
NASA definitely has a
shortly,
PR issue with
and
the
you know that
way
you're gonna be out
in
there
which
on
they
your own with your
present
crew, waiting to
information.
go.
It's very boxy, rigid, and stale. They could do more things to make the science exciting, but I don't think they need to create more heroes for our hero worship society. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Number 1 today is Crew 1 Mission Specialist Shannon Walker, who flew
For instance,
previously on the
they
Russian
could make
Soyuz
discussions
to the
about
International
how
Space Station,
crystals
spending
form
163 days in space.
in
Here's more on
zero,
Dr. Walker,
microgravity,
who will be the
and
first
why that's a
woman to
big
fly on
deal.
a
Much
commercial orbital
more
spacecraft.
entertaining to a
I
less
always wanted to be an astronaut.
informed audience than they currently
I
do.
just turned 4 when we first landed on the moon, and I have very distinct
Because
memory
I'll
of my
follow that, and I
parents
find
taking
the
me and my
detail and
older
the
sister
minutia
out
of that
into the backyard,
interesting and
and the
exciting.
moon was rising
But
over our house,
people
and
who
they
are
pointed
watching,
up there and said,
they
"We
don't
have
even know
people
NASA
there."
TV is broadcasting
And even at
24/7
4,
with
I thought that
informational
just
streams
sounded
like that,
the
you know,
best
in a
thing ever.
documentary style format. There has to be some measure of outreach that NASA does to say, let's boil this down to digestible nuggets that are exciting to consume, and they don't get there.
Would be a corruption of a God-given ability.
NASA's hook for the public blew up when Challenger blew up. They have backed off of it because of that risk.
In the newspaper,
They were instructed to.
what their qualifications were.
Those of you that
and
don't
just going
understand the
through
original
some
purpose of
them,
the
I
shuttle was
realized
not to
I can do
just
that.
put astronauts in
And
space
that was a big
and
turning point.
build the ISS. That was not what it was designed for.
I'm
NASA
Dr.
envisioned
Shannon Walker, NASA
to be what
astronaut, and I
SpaceX
am
is
getting
now.
ready to fly on
They
the Crew
wanted
1
commercial
mission to the
companies to
International
come
Space
to
Station.
NASA to say, let's put our satellites, our payloads in the
Crew 1
shuttle,
is the first
and then
operational
NASA
mission
will get
of
paid
the
to take those
Crew
payloads
Dragon
to orbit. And they
vehicle
did
the
to an
International
extent,
Space Station.
but it became
I was
so
not
cost
expecting the call to be
ineffective for the
assigned,
shuttle
so,
to do that, that
anytime
everybody
you get
just
a
went out to
flight assignment,
Vandenberg and fired the rockets from there for a lot less money. So the shuttle is the symbol everyone knows from NASA's, 80s and 90s period, and it was the romance with that vehicle that everyone really has a heartstring, pulled for. But the shuttle wasn't doing the lion's share of the work, and they need something like that. NASA doesn't own Dragon; they can't go out there and market Dragon. They can market Launch America, which is what it is with respect to an emblem and all that. But what they should really be touting is, they should be talking about making Gateway and Artemis into something more than just the social thing they want it to be. And I'm talking about, the next man and the first woman in space and the focus on women's space. That's great, but there's nothing there grabbing people right now. With SLS delays and how NASA has been bumbling through the teens of this century, they have fallen behind with their ability to say, look how amazing we are. With respect to crewed spaceflight. So, they do amazing things, like Perseverance launched on ULA rocket, and that's going to be great. That's going to be on Mars in February. We're going to watch that. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be amazing. That's awesome. Perseverance is an awesome mission. But NASA doesn't have moments like that very often anymore. They don't have anything they can singularly point to and say, this is the symbol of what we do. Because SLS isn't that yet, right? Orion is not that yet.
To be a part of that,
they need something that they can, almost like a sports team has a logo. They need to be able to point to something, or they have a franchise player. You need something like that to where NASA can point to this thing they are doing and saying, this is amazing. And we're going to show you how amazing it is over and over and over and over. Because the ISS makes people's eyes gloss over, right? I find it extremely interesting. They do a lot of cool stuff up there. But it's science, and there's nothing firing an engine up there. It's a 25-year-old space platform at this point.
Very quiet person. And
yes, like they did with Hubble. And the Webb telescope may be that thing when it launches, but it was delayed due to COVID.
As well.
For those of you that don't know what the Webb telescope is, it's going to sit on the other side of the moon, that far away from Earth, because it's going to use that shadow to diminish the amount of light pollution it gets in its optics to see more. And that's going to make Hubble's images look like someone drew on paper with crayons.
Well, my mission will be help support
it has
the commander and the pilot,
photonic or light optics, but it also has IR optics. It's going to be an amazing thing when it gets out there. It has to get out there first. And then the question becomes, I really hope they get everything right, because how would we get a crew out there to service it like we had to do with Hubble if something goes wrong? And that's the thing NASA's problem is. What happens when NASA missed something? And that's the public perception right now that has to be overcome.
Definitely gives us a great rigidity to our crew.
And that it's been that way since Challenger, right? Like Apollo was what it was. It was this amazing race. Apollo 1 was this tragedy, but they got right back to work and they put people on the moon. And while I hate to say forgot about, people compartmentalized Apollo 1. But ever since Challenger, NASA has went from this pace of science and exploration that was very public and very in everyone's face to just going to sit back and not cause any more trouble anymore. And they're struggling to get out of that. Because they're not on the hook tonight, right? SpaceX is on the hook.
And the next flight was 2009. That was on the Russian
But anyway,
Soyuz.
I'm going to step away for a moment. So I need to use the restroom. We're at T-minus 1 hour 57 minutes. Let's do a quick recap of where we are right now. It's 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. The next thing that will happen is at 6:17, the ISS current state, everything about it, where it is, how it's oriented, blah, 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 is uploaded into Dragon's computer so it understands where it is and how to, do its auto guidance to it.
I'm really looking forward to go back to that launch day.
And then the next thing that will happen is at 6:42 p.m., the SpaceX launch director will advise go for propellant load. That's major. That means that they have pretty high confidence they'll launch. They're not going to waste all that prop just to bring it out, a half hour later. I will talk about what you just said, Gilly, when I get back. You cannot be risk averse and run a space program that's effective. That is very true. But I'll be right back. I'll take my camera down for just a minute. You guys can listen to what is being presented here, and I'll talk to you in just a few minutes.
All the other people around the world have a chance to ride on this Crew Dragon. So this is a new era.
Okay, we're looking live now inside the White Room. You can see.
We're discussing that. Negative. We're going to go to pad hatch reopen temporarily.
Okay, so it sounds like they may be reopening the hatch. We're going to listen in to see if we can hear any more chatter about that. Okay, so it sounds like they want to double check a leak check. So we may see that hatch reopen momentarily. Nominally, we would expect right about now to hear a call out for hatch close right at T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. So we haven't heard that just yet, but we did hear that the teams are looking at reopening the hatch to double check some leaks.
So what I'm hearing is that the closeout team saw a little bit of a pressure drop during those leak checks. So like I mentioned before, it's not like closing a door, right? Or it's not closing the door to your car. The door closes, they check the environments inside the capsule, make sure we're good. Then they perform a leak check again, essentially making sure that the cabin and the door are able to maintain pressure and environments. So something like this,
they're redoing a leak check?
To reopen it, it might just be they have to reposition a seal. So we're considered a minor issue at the moment, but it might be as simple as
let's see
allowing us to open the hatch, check the seals and the latch mechanism, and then able to reclose it.
Yeah, they're eating into 17 minutes, but they have all this time built into it. Let's see what they're saying publicly here. Yeah, so this is from Michael Sheets, who is a reporter down in the Florida area for CNBC.
He's been listening to some more details. John, can you give us an update?
They are
on
discussing
what's going
reopening
on
the hatch of Crew Dragon, saying they want to reconduct a leak check.
The Dragon nets, in addition to Falcon 9. Right now, you can see on the screen the crew inside Dragon. Everything is safe at the launch pad. We have not gotten into propellant load.
Yeah, you're ways away from propellant load.
Our standard procedures. We did communication.
So they're going through potentially another leak check here,
environmental. Hey, the temperature was
which they have some time to do. But to what Gilly was saying earlier, with you cannot be risk averse and run an effective space program. That's true. So with Crew flight
We're running that
safety
leak
is
check,
the
and they
number
saw a
one
little bit of
thing.
a
It
drop
has
in
to be
pressure.
in your
So
mind.
what you're seeing on the
The
screen
difference
right
in
now
mindsets
from
from the
outside of
60s into the
capsule on
70s and
left,
into the 80s was
the SpaceX
there was an
ingress
obvious
team in the access arm in
rush
the white
to
room,
get things
they're gonna
done
open
in the
that hatch
60s,
back
which is
up
what
again.
caused
One thing they
Apollo
wanna
1's
look at is
disaster.
just make sure nothing got trapped
The,
in the seal.
the
They're gonna take a look at the
pressurization
latch
of the
mechanism.
capsule at sea
They're also
level
gonna
to
check in their equipment to make sure that it's try to make sure whether or not it's actually
I believe I know who that
capsule,
is.
or it might be in the measuring
Hey, Dad.
equipment that they're holding on
Welcome
to.
in.
So you can
So,
see right now the latch
in the 60s,
hatch
leading up
has
to
come
Apollo
open,
1, there was this
and they are beginning
need to
troubleshooting,
get
taking a look
it
around
done
the
because they were
seals
under
of the
that
pilot.
9-year time frame. The
Yeah, I just wanted
pressurization
to
of the
let you know
capsule
that
at
we
sea
do have
level
about
to
12
it was
about 10 minutes
32
of margin in the schedule
atmospheres,
for
which
this
is not
troubleshooting.
what it was supposed to be in space. It was only supposed to be rated to 2 atmospheres, but they had to simulate that in the capsule at sea level, and they pumped that much oxygen into the capsule and then pressurized it by a factor of 8 exponential to get it that high to represent what it would be in space. And Velcro combusts at that pressure in a pure oxygen environment. They didn't test for that, and there was so much Velcro all over the capsule that when the spark happened below the seat of the astronauts, it was just a frayed wire. When that happened, it arced and it lit everything up. And in 15 seconds, they were all dead. So it's that rush to get done, and they didn't have the foresight to think about everything that needed to be done. That's the wrong end of that pendulum, right? That was a disaster that was preventable if someone had stepped back and said, hey, what's the science behind all the materials in this pressure, in this capsule at that time? The plugs out test is relatively routine. A frayed wire was all that had to happen to show the disaster there. Challenger is a different thing, because they knew they shouldn't have launched that rocket that day. They were below temperature tolerances for the O-rings on the solid rocket boosters. Go fever got them in trouble that day. And from that day, they swung their pendulum from Apollo 1 and into the shuttle program. Apollo was fairly safe program. They were really safety conscious, but they were in the right balance of still getting things done, but keeping in mind that these are crewed missions,
this is John.
and they needed to be very specifically safe about it. And then they reached the shuttle program and got overconfident again, and then said, don't worry about it being 3 or 4 degrees below tolerance in Fahrenheit degrees. Let's launch anyway. And look what happened. Exactly what Manny just said. Challenger was ignorance and arrogance. It was arrogance. It wasn't ignorance. They knew. It was arrogance. But then come back around to Columbia, and that was a...
Crew safety.
Who the heck knew that was going to happen, right? I believe at the time of Columbia, NASA had returned to the right tempo of risk aversion versus ops tempo. But it caused them to swing their pendulum all the way back to the post-Challenger era, and we're still there.
I also heard the comment, we've got about 10 minutes, but as a reminder, the SpaceX team doesn't actually leave the crew access arm until T-minus 60 minutes.
So NASA needs to return to a point where they're in that happy spot where they're taking that Apollo suite era, where they're taking the necessary precautions and evaluating everything they need to be evaluating, but they're still accomplishing their goals in an exciting manner.
Put out the mission timeline ahead of time,
Hey,
so
Perm.
folks can follow along, but we understand and we try to.
So for those of you coming in right now, they are
reconducting.
reconducting. The hatch has been reopened, and they are reconducting a leak check on the capsule,
thinking back to demo
which is
2,
not
if I
standard
remember
procedure
correctly,
here.
they
It's
were
not
also
per the
running ahead of
checklist that was
schedule in
published.
terms of when Bob and Doug got in their seats and strapped in and closed the hatch.
It was viewed as
so obviously given an instantaneous
they understood the heat
launch
shield
window,
integrity was obviously
for
important,
the
right? The
space
tiles
station
were
launches.
important. What they didn't
If
understand was
we
that the
if we
paint
didn't
was
have
doing as much
margin,
damage
that
as
would
it was
be a
doing.
potential
No
scrub
one had
scenario,
any idea
but
that
like
the paint
we
was
heard
hitting
the call out
the
earlier,
shield
we're about
tiles
10 minutes
as
ahead of schedule.
as
So
heavily as they
glad
were
to have that
to create
flexibility.
such a dent in them to cause a burnout.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Kate
I
was
believe
saying, looking
Columbia
back
was
over
the
my
first time
notes,
there was
when we
ever
did the first demo 2
a
launch, it
shield
wasn't
tile
until about
damage to the
right now
degree
in
that
the
it was
countdown that the
due
first
to
hatch
effectively
check,
falling debris from
completed.
paint
So,
during liftoff. Where are
by
we
that
flying to today?
schedule,
International Space Station,
which
Perm.
we were ready to
Where they do
support
science
launch
and
right
stuff
on
that helps
time
you,
until the
have better
weather
medicine.
got us. We're still looking good, I think, in the countdown.
So just to give you guys a check on where we sit in that countdown, it's currently 5:39 and 18 seconds Eastern Time. There is a little bit of a window here. They have until, they were supposed to have the hatch closed only 7 minutes ago. And then the next real big check isn't until 6:17 for the ISS status upload. And then they don't have another major milestone until 6:42. So realistically, they have until probably about 6:20 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to get this done.
Nicole, I wonder, did you have any issues that had to be worked through real time on either of your shuttle missions?
You remember that when we brought DM2 back home
similar to something
and
like
it landed,
I think
that they had a vapor check problem that
it's really
prohibited
amazing
them
how the
from
team just
opening the
comes
hatch
together
for
and
almost
works those
35,
procedures
40
like
minutes that day.
Kate
So
mentioned, where
we'll see what happens.
We've tried our best to think about what could
It will
go
come down to
wrong
SpaceX
and,
flight
you know, in these
director
different scenarios, and then put
verifying
those
they're still
procedures in
go.
place
And I
to
think
work
that
it.
as long as this hatch is closed and they don't have a leak issue
unless
by
there's something that we
6:30,
can actively
6:40,
participate in, we're just
as well as a
following
bunch of
along to
derps on the
make
boat,
sure
that's been
that,
addressed.
you know, everything is picking back up.
We'll see if it's been addressed in 210 days. New rocket, new team, or same as last time. So it is the maiden voyage of this booster. This booster had to have 2 of its Merlin engines pulled and replaced, which is why the delay happened from October until now. And the crew is entirely 4 new astronauts.
Just joining us, we're at T-minus 1 hour and 47
It's the first time
minutes.
ever that a capsule containing 4 crew members will launch into space if this thing goes up tonight. Remember, Apollo carried 3. This is also the maximum crew load that NASA will contract SpaceX for.
They opened the hatch back up, and as John and I explained, there is some margin in the schedule. And so this is not necessarily a showstopper. It would be premature to speculate about any of that.
So we'll see what happens here as they go through this leak check. The hatch is open.
Watching some troubleshooting in real time.
The shuttle max complement was 7. Routinely, the average was 5. The first ever shuttle flight was 2.
See the crew sitting pretty comfortably there.
And if this does become an abort scenario, yeah, the shuttle isn't a capsule.
Something I didn't
It
get
was a
to
reusable
mention
space
earlier,
plane.
is that
Completely different
the
concept in
seats
terms of space flight.
are custom
No,
sized for
not
each
cheaper.
astronaut. So not only
Pretty much
is
same price.
the length of the bucket, so basically the length from the tailbone to your shoulders, that is specific for each astronaut, but so is the footrest as well as the armrest. So
I'm just
expecting to
scouring to see if
fly
anyone else is seeing
people of
anything
many
else.
different heights and
Nothing
wanting
else
to
really
make
coming out
sure that,
publicly.
their positioning is not only
Yeah,
operational,
so this is
but
from spaceflight now. The
comfortable as well.
closeout crew is doing
And it seems
a
like everyone's
basically a
pretty
visual
comfy in
inspection of
there.
seals around the hatch.
And we can't overstate how
Sealing surfaces, looking for anything that might prevent a tight seal. Weather
Weather
continues to be go for launch.
Doing these leak checks and making sure that that hatch is secure.
So a sensor
and
indicated a slight
behaving the
pressure
way it
drop.
should be before they leave the pad, because
And
these
what they're
4
saying on the
astronauts
ground right now is
inside
SpaceX has
capsule,
about 10 minutes to get this
is
trouble
going
shot
to be
and
fueled
resealed.
in a little over
I think they can
an
stretch
hour,
that.
and head off to space. And so it's the job of
The significance of the
these
numbered
people that you
outfits,
see
so
on
every
your
crew member
screen, in
that is
addition
in
to
the pad
hundreds
crew for
and thousands
SpaceX has a
more around
specific
the
job,
country
and it's
that have been
easier,
working
especially when
so
you can't see their
hard,
faces, to
for
know
months
their
and
number.
years to keep
The
this
number
crew
also
safe.
corresponds to the roles
Again,
and the
this is the
tasks they
first
execute
operational
on the
or,
checklist, and then
rotation
each
mission,
astronaut has an
4
individual
people on
crew
Crew
or pad
Dragon,
member
the
that is
first of
responsible for them
hopefully
from
many more
suit
to
up
come.
to ingress,
And
basically.
so, the team
Like
has
they're
to-
responsible
has
for
to
making
keep
sure
the crew
everything
safe.
about the suit fits,
So I'm now
that the zippers are
hearing
pulled,
that,
everything's set
closeout
up.
team that we
So
saw
each, they
there
basically
were
all have
able
their own
to
personal
check the seals
assistant
and
as one of
clean
those
them a little
numbered crew
bit.
members.
They found a little piece
But the numbers
of FOD
effectively represent the
there
job
in
they're
seal,
doing
so
and
that's
the
probably
tasks
what
on
was
the
causing,
checklist at specific
the
points that they are
hatch
supposed to do.
not maintain
It's
pressure.
more easy to identify
So
who is
they
doing
are
what from
about
those
to-
numbers
I
than
can't
anything
quite
else.
tell on the screen, but they will be starting to close that.
And what is FOD for people who don't know the
Foreign
acronym?
object
Foreign
debris.
object debris.
Okay. So what's an example of what that could be?
Quad could be anything.
You know, it's hard to tell because it depends on the environment, but something as small as a piece of lint to, you know, something like our cell phone.
So what they're
or
talking about right now is
so
FOD
that's
with
part
respect
of
to the hatch
reason why
seals, right?
earlier
Foreign
in
object debris is anything that
the
can
webcast
interfere
I
with the
mentioned
operation
that
of
the
an engineered piece of
closeout,
equipment.
excuse me, the
It's most commonly
suit
applied to flight
technician
lines,
team are
where
checking to make sure
we used to have to do
nobody's
FOD
wearing
walks on the
unapproved
flight
earrings or
line in
jewelry.
Japan to make
Those
sure there
are all
weren't things like
considered FOD or
pebbles
foreign
and
object
screws,
debris,
because
but it looks
jet
like we're
engines
gonna,
have intakes, right?
be
Last thing
closing
you
that
want
hatch
is jet
again,
engine
if it's
intake
not
taking
already, and
in a
reperforming
rock
that
and
leak
spinning
check.
it through the
Like I
turbine,
mentioned
and
before,
you know
we do
that's
have
bad.
contingencies built into our
So what they're talking about
procedures.
here
We're
is
running
anything
ahead
that
of
could
schedule.
interfere. Like think about
So
the
nothing
weather
to
seal on your
speculate
car
causing
door.
an abort at this
If anything
time.
was in there to
Um,
depress that
but
seal, enough,
said,
then water
we
leaks in,
will
right?
be
So that's what they're
pressurizing
talking about here with the
that
pressure
hatch.
check. They're making sure
I
there's
can
no
say
foreign
that
object
it's not
debris
like we
around
bring
the
it to pressure
sealing
and check if it's
apparatus
good.
of the
We
hatch
wanna bring it to
that would have
pressure,
caused
allow it
their
to sit there for
sensor
a couple of
to
minutes
say,
and
hey,
watch
there's a
whatever
pressure
the
drop here, that
decay
we're
is, if
leaking,
any.
we're leaking
Dragon
pressure.
SpX for status.
And go ahead for Dragon.
Yep.
Yeah, the team did find a possible root cause. They are checking cabin environments, and we're getting ready to close the hatch again.
So possible root cause identified. They didn't say what it was, and they're getting ready to seal the hatch again.
Dragon copies, and we see pad hatch closed. Prep.
Copy it.
I've never actually heard the term foreign object debris applied to a door, but it fits because
So
that's
just
exactly what it is.
the ground crew,
Something foreign to the
communicating to the crew
apparatus
inside Dragon,
that shouldn't
giving
be
them
there,
a
that is
status
inhibiting
update,
or impacting
letting them
operations
know
negatively.
that potential root cause
Effectively
has
what
been
FOD
found,
is.
and that they will be closing that hatch and beginning the leak check once again.
So the leak check was supposed to take place at, they actually didn't have it on the schedule. Leak checks were accomplished at 5:13. Hatch was supposed to be closed for flight at 5:32. We're now at 5:45, so we're about 13 minutes behind schedule on that. We're still well ahead of schedule for ISS upload
So we
state.
heard that they may have identified the root
We'll see if this seals it.
But we haven't heard.
They
what
have to
that
open that hatch a
cause
second time. I'm
is, or what
pretty
they
sure they'll
suspect
scrub.
it is yet. So if we hear that, we will relay that to you. But that is not information that we have heard just yet.
And Dragon SpaceX hatch is closed.
So control states hatch is closed.
Dragon copies, do the same.
Dragon didn't cost 1.7 to build. Design is a different
Okay,
thing.
so we heard hatch is closed, and so we expect a leak check to be forthcoming.
The problem with the shuttle is, while it was a completely reusable space plane, elements of it were not, right? The fuel tank was reusable. The fuel tank was not reusable. The SRBs were, but the entire underside of the space plane was not. So there's all that built-in cost. So you're effectively taking a tank that's the size of a rocket and having to refurb one every time, or rebuild one and build a new one every time you launch the shuttle. How much cost savings are you really going to get out of that compared to launching a stand-up rocket with a capsule on top?
Closing the Dragon side hatch for the second time, getting ready to do another leak check. And
We aren't there yet with spaceplane technology. Buran wasn't there either. For those of you who don't know what Buran is, Buran was the Soviet answer to the shuttle. It flew
So
once.
we see them performing the mechanical
There's actually a
sealing
graveyard
of
in
the
Russia
hatch.
where all the Burans are now.
After
It's
this is complete, we'll begin
cool
the
but
leak
sad
check.
at the same time. Star Trek Discovery has one of its ships named after Buran, if you paid attention to season 1.
We are at T-minus 1 hour and 40 minutes, so with still some margin in the schedule, so this is not necessarily going to throw the
So
rest
the
of
leak
the
check
launch
is underway
timeline
now.
off track, but we're just standing
Tell by
to
the
see
measurement
if,
device
teams can
attached to
get
the
this,
hatch.
issue resolved.
Not Baba Buran. It's B-U-R-A-N. You can actually go watch some YouTube videos on it. It's an interesting thing. The Buran flight was completely automated from launch to landing in the 80s. Yep.
Okay, it sounds like we've got an update from John Innsbrucker in Hawthorne. John, what can you tell us?
Well, Marie, right now we're just inside 100 minutes until the Falcon 9 launch. We're waiting right now to hear the results of the hatch leak check. The second one's going on. As we've mentioned, we think we found a little bit of debris in the seal, and fingers crossed that we're going to do that. We're also waiting to hear the comm checks between the Dragon crew and the Falcon 9 launch team, the responsible engineers down in the firing
Dragon
room.
SpaceX for status.
To catch up right now,
They
as I
watch
mentioned, we're just inside
a lot of
100
TV and
minutes.
build it real quick, Manny.
Okay, the leak check hardware is connected, and we're holding pressure now. Still in progress.
Holding pressure good. Wait for it to finish.
Dragon copies, and that's good news.
Yeah, and I will provide some more words on.
I'm
what
not
they
sure.
identified,
I believe they built like
once we
a lot of
enter my
them
postal
actually. I
space.
think it's like 6. I'm not sure where they all ended up. I know that there are 3 in the graveyard that I'm talking about, but they were never like flight-ready Barans.
That's affirmed. Yeah, they're still performing it.
T-minus 1 hour, 38 minutes, and 30 seconds. Little behind in the countdown now, thanks to the second leak check that has to be conducted after the hatch was reopened. Initial reads have sounded good from the team on the pad.
Okay, we heard a little bit of chatter. I'm not sure if y'all picked it up on the webcast, but they talked briefly to the crew, gave them an update similar to one we were just presenting y'all. The good news is that they are farther along in the leak check right now than they got the first time. So again, things are going in the right direction.
Okay, so they got past the point in the diagnostic, effectively, that is the leak check that errored the first time, which is good news.
The SpX folks, they will be able to leave a little bit later than T-minus 1 hour.
That's the other thing that has to be accounted for here is they talked about before we went live, we were just watching, they talked about the blast area, the danger area. That crew must have enough time to clear that area and hit the safe zone before they launch the rocket. And we saw that was a 20-minute drive to get from the ONC building. They don't have to get that far, but it's somewhere between, and then 20 minutes to get to that point.
Yeah, if you are ready, we are going to kick those off.
Yeah, thanks, Perm. I think they approve of it being a good plan not to, blow out the eardrums of their pad crew. Glad to see you here, my friend.
Dragon, GNC on countdown 1, comm check.
So this is the last aspect of the comm check going on now to the ground crew. They did the TDRS checks and Dragon to ground checks earlier. This is basically Dragon to control comm checks going on right now.
Dragon, prop on countdown 1, comm check.
And prop Dragon on countdown 1, have you loud and clear.
They're checking their comms to the launch facility operations team right now. They have Berlin. So we went through a thing about FOD, which I'm sure you know what that is. They believe they found the root cause as a piece of small foreign debris and resealed the hatch. They are in progress on the second pressure test. And they have proceeded further than the first test got. They have not completed that test yet. The pad crew is still present on the pad, obviously.
Loud and clear. Stand by for comm
And they are also simultaneously now doing Dragon to control checks at Florida.
Avionics, this is Dragon on countdown 1. I have you loud and
So
clear.
they're going station by station right now. All those flight controllers, or the launch controllers, Kennedy, and they're talking to all of them to make sure all of the comm links work. Yeah, they are a little behind. I would say they're about 15 or so minutes behind, and they are trying to multitask to catch up.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control, this is Dragon on countdown 1, loud and clear.
Launch control, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer.
Dragon, see you on countdown.
Again, the next major milestone that has to be hit is 6:17 p.m. for the ISS status or state upload to Dragon's computers. And the major milestone that will come up is at 6:42 p.m. Eastern Time when the SpaceX launch director gives a go for prop load. We're within the hour on that now.
Correct.
Should be a really pretty launch going up at night. Again, the booster is on its maiden flight. They will try to recover it on, of course, I Still Love You, which is the drone ship out in the Atlantic.
Good news is we've gotten through the comm checks between the SpaceX team and the Dragon capsule. We're at T-minus 1 hour and 34 minutes. On the Falcon 9, everything continues to look good. Big event really coming up
launch escape
is
checks.
propellant loading as we get inside T-minus 35 minutes.
Which name, Rocket?
Dragon side.
Okay, Resilience, at this time we're going to commence health check for the launch escape system. You can expect a momentary flight computer state change followed by a transition.
Oh, of course, I Still Love You. I like Just Read the Instructions. That's a great name for the other drone ship. So, based on what they're doing, it feels like they're proceeding past the seal check, even if it's not complete at this point.
Okay, I think we've got a moment now, listening to them talk.
Welcome in, Arky.
On Dragon, other than the side hatch leak check that's been going underway, everything else has been looking good. On the weather front, the good news is that while we've been watching for rain showers in the trajectory of the Falcon 9,
while they talk about
we've
weather,
been watching for heavy rain or thick clouds. Currently, everything does continue.
That looks pretty good.
As we were hoping, the frontal boundary was slowing down and may not reach Kennedy Space Center by the time of launch. And right now, that continues
that's
to look
going to
like
be
it's gonna
close,
happen.
but it looks pretty good.
So the local conditions are good. Upper altitude winds, we're looking at the balloons we've been releasing, and those show us that conditions in the upper altitude for stability are good. So we ought
I didn't expect upper level winds to be a problem. Upper level clouds were my only concern.
And of course, the range is ready to go. So right now, we're
So as long as they don't have any static potential and their rain holds off, we should be good to go from a weather perspective here.
John, thank you very much for that update.
Assuming we get past this whole leak check thing.
And I can confirm for you, John, weather is looking good right here. Just a thin layer of clouds.
Daryl Nail is still the
at the launch complex.
best
I'm joined now by Deputy
local news
Jim
name I've
Morhart,
ever heard.
From NASA here, and we appreciate him coming to talk a little bit about licensing of these launches, and that's a new thing around here, Jim, because previously that's not something that we heard a lot
For those of you
about,
that,
we understand
as we do with BOSA
launch
streams, and we
is
talk
the
about,
first
kids watching, again,
commercially
6:45-ish is about the time the dominoes will start to fall
why
here.
that is and how that works.
You know, Joe,
That is a lot of high cloud cover.
it has just been certified for the first time.
Yeah,
We
what is
licensed
this
a lot of launches.
thing
We
on
had
my hat? It's driving me
29
nuts.
launches that were licensed in 2020.
He does have that steel-jawed
and
Christopher
we're
Reeve
expecting
look.
another
Christopher
56
Reeve
in
look,
2021.
indeed.
So it's going exponential.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight.
And, we're
This is
excited
a
about
pretty
that. We
historic
really
launch for a couple
collaborated
reasons. Again, we'll
with
walk through
the
it.
Federal Aviation
Now that
Administration, which is
Dragon
part of
2
the
is
Department of
certified. Remember, DM
Steve
was a
Dixon
demonstration,
is
was
the
an
administrator.
experimental
He's
mission,
here right
certified.
now.
This
He's
is
been
now
with us through,
Rotation Mission 1,
working
where
with
Crew
us,
Dragon will
which
go
is just
into a
tremendous.
rotation
It's
to
a great
deliver
collaboration
American and
between
international
the two
astronauts
agencies.
to the
So
International
for the
Space
public kind of
Station
understand
instead of
what this
relying
means, I
on
think,
Soyuz. So we still have
generally
Soyuz
speaking, we
to
all
bought next
understand
year
that
in
we
case
put
there's
aboard
problems,
a commercial
but the
aircraft.
prime
It's
crew
that
focus
carrier
will
is
be
FAA
on this
licensed.
vehicle.
So now,
This starts that
we're
cycle. This will
licensing
put a crew in
space flight,
space
launches,
for 210
commercial
days
ones
on the
with
International
people
Space
on board.
Station, taking the
So what does
ISS
that
to a crew
mean?
complement
What
of its
does
max
the
at
public take
7.
away from
There's
that?
actually a question
You
of
know,
whether
you
they have
think
enough
about it,
beds,
we have
and
the
if
most
one of the crew members will have to
complex
sleep in
airspace
Dragon for a while.
in the world over the United States.
It is
And
the
now
first
we're going
time
to
a
expand it
capsule
even more
vehicle to
into
space will carry a crew
And
of
so
4.
we're really integrating both
Toyuchi
our
Noguchi,
aeronautics,
I'm
our
going to butcher
aircraft
his
that
name
we
unless
fly
I look
and
at how
enjoy
it is
every day
spelled.
with space operations.
Toyuchi
So we're gonna
Noguchi
have both
is
those things happening at
will
the
become
same
the
time
third astronaut
with
ever to
human
fly into
space
space on
flight.
3 different
And
launch
that's what
vehicles.
we're doing here today at the Kennedy
The
Space
first
Center.
being Wally
That's
Schirra
impressive.
on
And
the
just
original
when
3
you
NASA
mentioned the
programs.
airspace
The second being
in
John
flight,
Young on
right?
Gemini,
Very
Apollo,
private
and the
place.
Space shuttle. And
Space
Noguchi
just
would
getting
fly on
started,
the
and
shuttle,
as you
on
mentioned,
Soyuz,
growing.
and now on
Where do
Crew
you see
Dragon.
this,
It's a
when you
pretty,
just kind of dream a
pretty
little
nice
bit, where do
group
you
to
see this
belong
going
to.
one day?
You know,
Given
Daryl,
how
you
Schirra
think
and
about
Young
it.
are
First off,
pretty famous astronauts.
it's both Federal Aviation.
Oh yeah, and the
Administration,
FAA certified it
but
for flight.
at NASA also, our
First
number
time. They
one
didn't certify her for
priority
flight
is
the first
safety.
time because again it was
That's what we're
a test.
focused on. But in the meantime, we're commercializing low Earth orbit.
He's really happy
Right
about
now,
that, and
we
he should
have
be
a
really cautious about that, as we talked about earlier.
$3
Commercial. How long is this
space
rotation?
economy in low Earth orbit.
So
That's
normally
a big number.
the
It is a big
rotation on the
number.
International Space Station for crew is like a standard person. If you said standard astronaut, you're going to the ISS, you're going to be there 6 months. That's usually how long they're there for. The expedition is usually rolled over every 6 months.
And
With
quickly,
notable
I think you were telling
exceptions
me
that occurred in the past
this
couple
also
years where they were
increases
doing
our
these
ability
extended
to do
missions to
science
test,
on the
long
International
range
Space Station.
viability,
with
bone
these
density
4
tests
great
with the astronauts, how much muscle mass they
Jim
lose, things like that.
Bridenstine and I
Usually
met
it's
with
6
them
months.
yesterday, and they want to fly, and we want to make sure they fly safely. But with that, when they get to the space station,
So
we've
180
got
days,
one astronaut
10
there
is
right now.
another
It's
month
going to
past that.
increase our research efforts.
So what will
up there
happen
by
is the
300%.
current Expedition 64 crew will come
And
down,
we really believe that
and these crew
demand
members
is
will
gonna
be
grow.
there,
And
and then the next expedition members will come up, and then this crew will come down. So it'll go from 7
by our
to
space
4
industry in the
to
United
7
States.
to 3.
And so, because there's so much research to be done.
By end
All
of
right.
summer.
Well, very good. Illuminating
beginning of summer, somewhere in
information about the licensing of spaceports. Appreciate your efforts and all your work in getting these government agencies to work together and talk to each other and come together with some consensus there. That's good stuff.
It's
So
my honor,
the next,
but this is
so they're
about
walking
safety,
away
and
from
we're
the
gonna
door
keep going.
now.
Excellent. Keep up the good work. Thank
We'll
you,
see what
Jim.
they say.
Jim Hart, Deputy Administrator with NASA, and we are now at T-minus 1 hour and 28 minutes. We'll toss it back to John I. in Hong
Yeah,
Kong,
let's see what
California.
happens here
John?
because they just took the tools away from the door.
Maybe not, John. We'll go to Marie, right here across the way at KSC.
All right, thanks, Daryl. I've got a brother named John, so I'll answer to either. We are standing by for a post-ingress briefing to the crew.
Dragon SpaceX for side hatch leak check.
And go ahead for the side hatch leak check.
Okay, good news. The leak check has passed, and we saw consistent readings to what we saw on dry dress. So it looks
The
good.
dry dress readings, which is the non-fueled pressure check readings, match this test readings. That's a green. That's go. They're getting ready to lock it down now. They're basically closing the valves that the test instruments went in and putting the panel back on. We're good to go.
Briefing the crew, letting them know that the leak check passed, and we're going to be moving
That will
along
get the
in
pad crew
timeline
out of here
They're now
with T-minus
attaching
127. That's
final
plenty of time.
Exterior cover there on the side hatch.
Rocket already went and got food.
And they mentioned that the levels that they checked were consistent with dry dress. They were referring to the rehearsal that was conducted Thursday. So just a couple of days ago, they went through this process. It's called
that
the dry
matches, that's
dress
good.
rehearsal because they do everything except fuel up the rocket and, of course, launch. So when they did the checks that day, obviously
No, they mentioned they were cutting across to someone at KSC, not KFC, Colonel
when they
Sanders.
did the leak check. So they opened the hatch back up, discovered some foreign object debris, or what we call FOD. Cleared that out. We don't know what exactly it was yet. We might hear about that.
I'm interested in knowing what it was, just because I'd like to know what size or mass of object could cause that seal to not work, but they probably won't tell
They
us.
said that was great news. So it sounds like we're getting back on track now.
So what they're doing, obviously, with those pads is a
closeout
liability
team member
thing.
just
They're
took
taking
the
pictures
final
of their
closeout
work.
photo there, or one of final, and we are moving along. If you look closely,
I'll need to
on
stop
the
talking about
right-hand
food
side, you
because
might be able
I
to
haven't
make
eaten
out
dinner
some
yet.
signatures there
I'm gonna eat after this
on
is
the
done.
wall
I
of
was
our
too
white
nervous
room.
about launch. Yeah, I mean, how it got into a FOD-free environment is simply a matter. I mean, Berlin, if it was a matter of whenever I used to do, like, we used to load cargo, right? You'd have the cargo nets that go over the cargo inside of an aircraft,
And
like
certainly
you're loading up a satellite
astronauts,
terminal or something.
sitting
And the
inside
smallest
the
little
Dragon
fray
capsule
was a
right now
problem.
appreciate
If
the
somebody's
attention to
strap of a
detail,
backpack
of this
was
pad closeout
frayed,
team.
that it could be that
I'll
simple.
tell you, Marie, it's interesting. I think one of the things we
Again,
definitely appreciate
I would
is
like to
that
know what
the
size
team
of
that works
object
here with
could
us on these
disturb the
spacecraft
seal enough to cause a
absolutely
problem.
believe that the care and feeding of those
If
spacecraft
it
really
is a thread, that's interesting.
and
You
we
think
know
there'd be a
that.
little
You
more
can tell as
tolerance
they're
than that.
working with you and hear them outside the hatch and on the radio as well.
So those are safety
Now, Kate,
harnesses.
can you explain what we're seeing now?
They're pulling back the
It's
canopy.
difficult for me to see on the screen.
They're detaching the canopy from the craft.
I'm sorry, I
I'm
can't
guessing.
tell what they're doing.
It is a little off. You know, it's above the frame of the camera view that we can see.
Are there things they have to remove before the seal with the hatch can pull back?
Shout to little giant ladders.
No, there's nothing necessarily attached to the capsule, but I would like to point out, again, we're not only taking into consideration the safety of the crew, but the safety of our team members as well. You can see the straps
I'll bet
there.
that
I believe
was
what they're
them
doing is
removing
they're
the straps to
basically
secure the
allowing,
canopy to the spacecraft so they
there's
can
a
retract
mechanism
the
there
arm.
on the crew access arm. There's kind of like an airplane door. It doesn't, the metallic pieces don't go anywhere near close to the airplane, but there's a little bit of a seal there to try and control the environment. Again, dealing with humidity and rain and bugs here in Florida, trying to keep all of that out and keep the environment
Little giant
secure,
ladders.
stable
Used by
and
NASA and SpaceX.
under control there. But yeah, so they are now preparing
Get your
to
little giant ladder
move
as
that,
it
all
lows
of
near
that
you.
fixturing away, and they
Give
are
them a
leaning out
promo.
over towards essentially the side of the rocket.
I feel much better
So
when
we
this
have
crew gets
those,
out of there.
Wires in place.
T-minus 1 hour,
for
23
fall
minutes.
Protection.
So we should be hearing any time now a post-ingress briefing. That's what we're expecting for the crew inside to kind of get a recap.
I do like that job. You're leaning out over
Okay, so maybe
the
a
edge
couple
of a
more minutes
tower
before
that
we
is
hear
no
that
longer
briefing.
secured
So,
to a
we're
spacecraft
going to move
with
on
people
temporarily.
basically
We've made
holding
mention
safety
of
lines for
the
you.
first crew to launch
All right,
in
perm.
Crew Dragon
Launches at
earlier this
7:27.
year. And you may remember them as
game will really
the
start to roll about
Space Dads,
6:45.
as they are affectionately known by the NASA and SpaceX teams who work with them. We watched them lift off from this very spot back in May, ending a
It's not that
9-year
high.
gap in human spaceflight
Like
from
double-digit
American
meters.
soil. And we want to honor the courage of NASA astronauts
252
Bob
feet
Behnken and
is
Doug
where they get off
Hurley
the elevator.
with a look at their historic Demo 2
Yeah, I
test
do any
flight.
job they want me to do. You don't get to see the underside of it very often. Those are the 9 Merlin engines. That's always cool to see. Again, they had to pull 2 of the engines from this booster because of a lacquer thinner problem. A lacquer that's used to clean several of the valves within the engine when the engines are reused or tested. And
Good morning. Welcome
they found that the lacquer wasn't being
SpaceX,
cleaned sufficiently.
Comcheck, ground stations.
So they had to pull 2 of them
SpaceX
and put 2 new ones in.
We're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
3, 2, 1. Ignition.
This was back in May. We watched this launch together. We got a little bit emotional. It was really cool to see these guys take off. And hopefully we get to see that again, but at night tonight. In about an hour and 20 minutes.
The entire launch team, thanks for flying with Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
We would like to welcome you aboard Capsule Endeavour. We do have a friend on board with us, Trimmer, the Apatosaurus. I think I was requested to do a backflip. Good night, Megan and Theo. And Karen and Jack.
Yeah, so they said that there is a 0G simulator on board. They know what it is, but they're not telling us what it is yet. I guess so that people on eBay can't go out there and buy them all before the big moment.
Houston is go for undocking and departure.
Dragon is committed to undock.
That splashdown was something else. To see that capsule get pulled out of the water the first time and to see all the gear work, and then we went through something with the vapor check and how much time that took, but it was a really good time to see the other side of this from a crewed perspective. We don't ever see payload launches don't have anything that comes back down that we care about. But watching those chutes deploy was a great moment.
200 meters.
See those drogues let go and then those mains come out like that. Awesome.
Endeavor on behalf of the SpaceX
Nadeko, welcome in. Long time no see. You are a
Thanks
VIP.
for flying SpaceX.
A VIP because you gave me a lot of hours during Darkest Dungeon, which your name is on the back of a shirt for.
It's a humbling experience to be a part of what was accomplished. It's great to see how
T-minus 1 hour, 20 minutes. It is 6:07 p.m. Eastern Time with a scheduled launch time of 7:27 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, we're watching everything and then go through the paces here, but the real show will probably start about 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time.
My family and I made a point to drive over here to the East Coast.
Well, the VOD's out there if you want to see the end of the fourth Darkest Dungeon. They're all there on YouTube.
That's a name that's familiar to the Kennedy Space Center family. And I'll tell you, it was a real joy to watch Bob and Doug in space and then to have them safely back on the planet with us. And now, special treat, we're going to hear from my dear friends and fellow bugs, AKA the Space Dads themselves. Daryl is standing by to talk with them. Daryl.
That's right, Nicole. We have Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the Space Dads, with us live from Houston, Texas. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on yet another historic day here at the Kennedy Space
There's
Center.
a lot of watching, Berlin. Or 42 episodes, each 3 hours in length.
Hey, Daryl, how are you?
Howdy, Daryl.
Good to see you guys. Good to see you. So you know this moment. You remember it, I'm sure,
Skilly?
well when we came to this moment in time where the capsule, the door was closed.
Yeah, some of that stuff is from back in the hockey days.
As we see astronauts, the 4 Crew 1 astronauts getting ready to fly.
We got organized when I started streaming.
Just thinking about the mission ahead, what you need to do to get through the next hour or two, the timeline. I mean, you know, you don't have a lot of time to think about a lot else. You've kind of wrapped everything up before you.
So for those of you that came in late,
out,
assuming we launch here in an hour and 18 minutes, I will again show the patch. This is the Crew 1 patch. You can see it on the behind the wall, but the really cool thing about the patch, and I'm sorry for those who saw it before, is these symbols along the bottom represent the shuttle, Apollo, Gemini, and Mercury. So this is indicating that Dragon is the successor to that line of vehicles. Along the top.
I think for both of
here,
us, our favorite
you can see the
was,
silhouette of the International Space
splashdown,
Station.
we were able to get the hatch open,
Assuming we
climb
launch,
out of the
we
vehicle.
will drop the green
As you might
screen. I do
imagine,
have the
as
space
you,
already
embark
open
on a
on the
test
board.
flight, you've got to
We
have
will
a lot
place
of
this
things
patch.
go
You will see me
very
place it
smoothly,
tonight
and
if we
you
launch.
got to get them all done and get to the
As
final
our tradition here,
test point that's
with
out there,
major
which was
launches, we will
splashdown
take
and
the mission
coming
patch
home.
and put it on the
So
wall
I
of
think
things we've watched
There's
together.
a little bit of relief, but kind of a
Is that
big
capsule near
kind of
see-through? No.
our
That's just my
emotions come
green
out, I think,
screen,
at
my
that
chroma
point,
key that's doing
after
that.
being really focused
It
on,
is
the mission
as
at
blue
hand
as you
all the
see
way
it on the
up to
wall
that
behind you. My green screen's picking it
Doug,
up as
what are
a
your thoughts?
green color, so it's see-through.
Well, I agree with Bob. You know, we invested 5 years with the teams. We went out to Hawthorne almost every week the last 2 years that we.
E-minus 1 hour, 17 minutes. You're talking to Bob Bacon and Doug Hurley right now. We flew the DM2 mission, which was the certification mission for this capsule that is now certified. It has 4 astronauts on board right now. The leak seal check, which had to be redone, is now good. They will be uploading ISS telemetry to the vehicle, completing their comm checks, and then we are waiting for the really the big go no go, which will be at about 6:45 p.m. Eastern time, and that is the prop load call from the SpaceX flight director. Again, the weather 50-50. Cloud cover looked a little bad. It didn't look to be like there was a lot to that front that was coming across Florida, main body of Florida, but we'll see. There can be no precipitation.
A conversation that you guys had. You had some important conversations with this crew. What did you tell them?
They have not retracted the arm.
What advice did you give them?
Well,
doing well, Diggity. I've been watching since about 3:15 when they went live. We watched just in the BOSA TV format. We watched the dressing, the crew trip to the pad, and the crew start to ingress into the capsule.
But I think the biggest message
we came live, started talking about things. And hopefully you'll be back, and we'll see you in time for launch.
And they should have confidence in the team as they go off and execute their mission. And so there are things that can be improved after our test flight, and they took a lot of those minor things to heart.
Yeah, there was little things about the test flight that NASA said were within tolerance. Those of you who don't know, the parachutes opened about half a second after they were supposed to. NASA said that's okay.
How quickly the vehicle got assessed and changes were made in preparation for this mission. It was just a short couple months ago.
Actually, a press conference on
since we came home
Friday
and,
afternoon.
we just really
they talked about all those small things that were not on the line, but within the tolerance band.
Doug Hurley telling them that when
parachutes
he was
were the thing that
commanding
stood
the
out to me.
landing, that he was ahead of the spacecraft. Describe what that means and why you think that helped him.
So we're rolling up on the next major thing they have to do on the spacecraft is the ISS state upload, which week was the fourth darkest dungeon. It is the last video in the
I had to work really hard to keep up with the shuttle,
but the last video in the playlist in the Detco. So if you go to my channel, there's a playlist called Embrace Oblivion, and it is the very last video in that playlist.
The quickness of the events that you deal with on reentry, everything happens pretty fast. So just mentally knowing that was coming, I tried to enforce that with Hopper. And just say, hey, look, it's, you're going to be in orbit for a while. Your brain slows down in a sense. But then when reentry occurs, those events really happen fast. From the time that you separate from the trunk all the way to splashdown happens, it seems like in an instant. So we talked a lot about that, and I just wanted him to be calibrated and be ahead of Dragon as best he could. and then communicate that obviously to his crew. He's got a great crew, and they'll be ready for it when
I love that their flight suits still have the
And in fact, he
DM2
said
patches
that
on them.
as a result of that statement, that he studied hard because he knew he had to be ahead of it in order.
Doug Hurley had
for
225s
when these
in there. I'd
events
have to go figure
happen,
out
be
why
ready for them
why he's wearing
as
two
they
of them.
come.
What the
Bob Bacon,
distinction is
Doug
there.
Hurley, astronauts with NASA, and the crew of Demo 1. We appreciate you guys. I'm Demo 2, sorry. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much, and enjoy the launch. And now we're going to send it back to the desk.
All right, thank you, Daryl. It is T-minus 1 hour and 13 minutes, and we understand John I has been listening in, has some more information to pass along on what's been going on, what information the crew has. So, John I, let's hand it over to you and Hawthorne.
Thank you, Marie. It's, as she said, T-minus 1 hour, 13 minutes, 24 seconds. The good news is we are on the timeline. While we were interviewing Bob and Doug, we did hear some discussion with the crew over the SpaceX to Dragon CrewNet. They gave them an update on a couple of issues that we've been working. The one of great interest right now has been the hatch close. They summarized that, as you saw on the monitors, we did reopen the hatch. They found a small piece of FOD, and they also worked on the seal around the hatch. They also did add a little bit of lubricant. They closed the hatch and then reran the 5-minute leak check, and they got a good result. So the crew heard that,
It's not
and
of interest.
they are
Done.
supportive, and that issue is now resolved and behind us. The other issue that we've been working that they briefed the crew on is just above the first stage where the propellant tanks and the inner stage meet. You can't see on your monitor there, but there are some weep holes, and what we'd seen is some water, I think, from maybe rain that has gotten in there has drained out. And that gave a little bit of discoloration. They wanted to make sure that might not be something else like the RP1 fuel that's on board the rocket. So they've done some review.
That's
of
what they were
data.
doing.
They see no issues with
They
the
were
fuel
removing the
system,
curtains so they could get a
or in
better
this
look
case,
at that.
it's the grid
That's
pin
what they were
system
doing.
that's in proximity in that area. They believe it's water. They briefed the crew, and again, that issue is now closed out.
Okay.
So coming up
So,
on just in
closeout crew has
1
departed the
hour and
White
12
Room.
minutes,
Crew access
we've
arm at
closed up
pad
our couple of
39A.
issues, and
Countdown
as we
remains
also
ahead
heard
of
just
schedule.
A couple minutes ago, the closeout team has left the crew access arm.
For
so
more
we're
on what
looking
John
good on
Innsbrucker is saying,
schedule.
hatch
So,
issue to
Jesse,
the crew
everything,
astronauts and reports
in
discoloration
the
around
very
vent
busy last
holes
20 minutes or
near the
so
first
has
stage
come
grid
together
fin,
and closed out.
and it
What
has
else
been
has been
identified
going
as due to
on?
condensation or precipitation, and
That
no
is
problem.
awesome
Vehicle is
news,
still
John. Thank you for
issue
that
free
very
and go for
detailed
flight.
update. We're just 1 hour and
See, look, she
11
dyed her hair to
minutes
match her
from
jacket.
launch, and it just keeps getting more and more exciting, especially with those updates coming in. Since arriving at the spacecraft,
I noticed
the
it
crew
when
were
she was
helped by
talking
our
earlier.
closeout engineers to get into their seats, attach their suits to special umbilicals that provide breathing air and a communication link to Dragon
Yes,
systems.
dedication.
They conducted leak checks.
Didn't they have an
which
issue
were
with water at
successful, and
DM2 launch?
communications
Not
checks with
on the
crew
craft
here
itself,
in
no.
Hawthorne, which is the person
Not
who
like
will
that.
speak to them directly
Only
throughout the
water
mission,
issue they had at
as
DM2
well
launch
as the
was
launch director in
precipitation.
Florida. This is where they are checking their comm path through both ground stations and tracking and data relay
Maybe, Gilly.
satellites
She'd have this
that will use to
black
talk to the crew
thing
the
going through the
entire
middle
way
there.
to the station.
And after those suit checks, we
This
were
black
looking
mohawk
for
of hair over
the
here.
leak check on the hatch. So we closed the hatch, and as John and I explained, there were some pressure changes, and so they reopened the hatch, removed what appears to be a piece of foreign object debris or FOD.
Yeah, multiple
reclosed
different
the
sources
hatch,
now saying the
conducted
same
those
thing.
leak checks, and
Condensation on the
everything
hatch
has come
seal.
out well.
Sorry, on the
So the closeout team is
the
departing the
area
pad,
around the
and
grid
weather
fins.
operators are kicking
Lubricant,
off the
small
final
debris
check
removed
on
from the
wind
hatch
speeds
seal,
at the pad,
and both of
and
those
that'll
are
be
closed
used for the
out.
final go, no-go poll for launch. Before we get to that final go, no-go, the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX will do an internal go poll, making sure conditions are right with the Falcon 9, the Dragon, the crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. So let's check back in on Houston for a status on the team supporting the space station on their readiness for launch. Shaniqua?
This is the ISS flight manager.
Thanks, Leah. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. All systems on board the station that required to be healthy for mission are continuing to look good. Before the station team is go for
Notice
launch,
that
they
the
verify that key
area
systems
in the
on
back
board the
here, this is
station
where
are
ISS
functioning
is
as
controlled
expected.
from, right?
This includes
And
life support
you'll
systems
notice
like
it's
oxygen
pretty
generation,
skeleton
carbon
crewed in
dioxide
here,
removal,
right? You're
and
like,
the
oh,
water
they're launching
recapture
Crew
system that
Dragon. Why
allows
wouldn't there
us
be
to
lots of
reuse
people? The
about
crew on
90%
ISS is
of the
asleep
water
right now.
we send to station. We're also
They had to go.
ensuring that
They had to
computers
adjust
that
their
allow
sleep
us to
cycle
command
so
the
that
station's
they can
major
be
subsystems,
awake when Crew
essentially the
Dragon
station's
gets
nervous
there.
system, are functioning normally.
And so they're
We
asleep
also
now,
work
so they
with
can be
our
awake
rushing
tomorrow.
counterparts to ensure both methods
And
of
so their
controlling the
skeleton
station's
crew,
attitude
they
or
always
the direction
skeleton
station is
crew's
pointing
third shift for
are fully
ISS in
functional.
Houston.
This includes the large U.S.
You
gyroscope
can see,
and the
and I'll bring my
thrusters
mouse
found in
over
the
to
Russian
it,
segments.
right here.
Both systems
That's
play
the
a critical
Expedition
role during
64
Dragon's
patch, which
docking.
I will acquire as
Mission
soon
Control
as we
Houston
know
will be
this thing is
closely
hit.
monitoring
I'm
the crew's
superstitious.
flight and
As soon
checking
as
off
this thing
milestones
docks
for most of the
with
journey.
ISS, that
Lead
64 patch will
NASA
go on the
Flight
wall as
Director
well.
of Crew 1, Anthony Varia, will lead flight
I don't like to
controllers in
jinx anything.
Houston for launch, and they will all be coming back tomorrow for docking, where we join joint operations with SpaceX. So I'll send it back over to you, Marie at KSC.
What the last hand gesture was. But
All right, thank you, Shaniqua. If you are just now joining us, you picked a great time as we are now at T-minus 8 minutes and 22 seconds until launch.
no, we're at
Welcome
T-minus
to
1
coverage
hour,
for the
8 minutes,
mission
and
known
22
as
seconds
Crew
until
1,
launch.
NASA and SpaceX's second flight with
Assuming
crew
that
to
the
the
flight
International
launches, will you
Space
also
Station.
stream the docking like you did
Liftoff
with
time is
DM2?
still
I need to
holding
check the
for
time on that, Gilly. It
7:27
depends on when it
PM
is.
Eastern Time,
Let me see
instantaneous
where that
launch
is in
window,
the
and we are
flight plan
tracking
here.
no issues currently with Falcon 9 or Crew
Yeah,
Dragon.
so it's not on the flight
The
plan
range
I'm
is
looking
green
at.
and weather is
Let me
cooperating
see.
so far.
DM,
Last check, it was
not
50%
DM2,
go.
Crew 1
Over the last
docking
3 hours,
with
our crew of
ISS.
Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi donned their
see.
SpaceX spacesuits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room.
Yep.
They walked out of that crew quarters building just as every astronaut to fly from this spaceport
11
in Florida
p.m.
has done since Apollo
tomorrow.
7. They were then transported
Yeah,
to the
it'll
pad.
be 11 p.m.
Our
Eastern
crew
time
entered
tomorrow.
The SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft.
I'll
You
definitely
see
throw up
live
BOSA
on your
TV
screen
for it
atop
just
the
so we
Falcon
can
9
watch and
rocket.
talk. I know
Well,
it's
this is
interesting. Those are
SpaceX's
usually pretty
second
quick.
time flying
It's usually like a
astronauts
45-minute
in
stream,
Crew
so I could
Dragon.
probably
It will
swing
also
that,
be the first
assuming
time
I get a
private
longer than
company will
expected
fly a
kind of
crew
nap
of
nap.
4 people to the space station.
So yeah,
If you remember
I'll
back
stream it
in
tomorrow
May,
night,
we
assuming they
launched
launch
NASA
tonight.
astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken
It's always cool to
to
see
the
it come
space
in,
station
especially
in the
SpaceX's
historic
presentation
Demo 2
is
mission,
good. They got some
and then
really good
brought
HD
them
cameras on
safely
their craft.
home in August.
Watch it.
Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch. Have the crew arm and
I
the
know
launch
it's
escape
always
system,
like cool to see the end of the
and
launch,
we'll
like what
begin
it
fueling
does.
Falcon 9.
We'll
Launch
record
is
it.
set for
You can watch it, rock it.
7:27 p.m.
I
Eastern.
know that that's late
This
for a lot
will
of people.
include a
It's not late for
12-minute
Dustin or
flight to
Berlin.
orbit,
So
and then a 27
I always stream it if
hour
I can
flight to
and
dock with the
record it so that
International
people can
Space
watch it later.
Station, set for Monday at 11 p.m. Eastern.
So Nicole, you know,
That's a
we're coming
long
up,
track.
on T-minus
They're going
1
to
hour
be
in about
in
6
flight for
minutes.
27
And I
hours.
know
That's a
when
long
we were
flight.
listening to Daryl talk to Bob and Doug.
I mean, they could get there as quickly as 4 hours if they fast track them, but they're
there's not a
not.
lot of time
And I
to
assume they're
think
not
about
fast tracking
your
them because they
emotions.
want this
You're
to become
focused on the
routine.
operation and
They
your
want the
procedures.
Your emotions
rotation
are kind
of
in
this
you at
capsule
this point, and you're just trying to make sure you're
will
as best
just
prepared
become
for,
part of the normal flow of
you know,
space
what's about to
flight,
happen.
and so
Sure.
they're not going
And
to fast
today's
track
flight
them
is
like
the
they
first
did
of
for
6
a
planned
test mission, which is
rotational
what
missions
DM2 was.
NASA has contracted with SpaceX as part of the agency's commercial crew program. The success of the Demo 2 mission allowed for NASA to complete certification
T-minus 1 hour, 6 minutes.
for SpaceX to fly astronauts regularly to and from the
Waiting
ISS,
for confirmation that the
bringing
pad
back
crew's
this
off.
critical capability of launching from American soil, which we haven't had the
Arm is
ability
still
to
up.
do regularly since the retirement of the space shuttle in 2011.
If you've been following along, you've been able to hear that we have been hearing a little bit from crew on board Dragon Resilience, currently
Yep.
strapped
So this is
into
as
their
of
seats,
16
and they've already
or
gone
18:15 or 6:15 p.m. Closeout crew has departed crew access
now, they
arm.
are able to follow
They are not
along
off
with
site
all
yet.
the action still ahead on the displays that are just above them. There are a couple of
What I'm going to do here is I'll wait for them to clear the pad,
them to get
and that'll
insight
give us
into all
about,
of the Dragon and
hopefully
Falcon 9
about 15
systems
minutes
as we
before we go to
proceed
prop
down
load.
towards launch. So we're currently at T-minus 1 hour and 5 minutes.
And I'll take my
Let's
last
check
break
with
in
John
between there because
Instructor for
I want
another
to stand up
status
one more
update
time.
on both vehicles. How's it going there, John?
Yeah,
Thank
just a
you,
heads up.
Kate. T-minus 1 hour, 5 minutes.
Closeout team to clear the VDA. Once that's complete, we're going to cycle the tank valves to equalize the manifold pressure. This is the same thing we executed yesterday earlier this week during dry dress.
So they're saying when the pad crew clears BDA, which the blast danger area, the get outside of that if you don't lose your eardrums area.
And Jay, your calls are coming in a little bit soft, and we're losing you kind of at the end of them.
Copy all
I
on
believe
that
it's
call.
his dad,
And
brother.
I'll let you know when we're ready for that tank valve cycling.
Okay, Dragon copies, and that was much better. Thank you.
Okay, we've just heard a little bit of the dialogue between the crew.
All right, so if the
inside
crew hasn't
Dragon
left yet,
Capsule
I'm going to stand up
Resilience,
now.
and
Put my
the,
camera and
SpaceX
mic, and you
Dragon
guys
team.
can listen in
Looks like they're gonna
for
be,
the crew to
cycling
exit
a
the
little bit of
BDA,
pressure,
get
giving
off
the
the
crew a heads
pad,
up. Probably hear some of that
and
noise.
hopefully we are on schedule here.
Now, as
as
I've
long as the weather
mentioned,
cooperates. So
we're
I will be right
T-minus
back,
1 hour
and I will
4
talk to you
minutes,
guys
counting
in a few
down.
minutes.
Good news is, as you heard a few minutes ago, we've resolved a couple issues we were working earlier in the count. And while the pace was busy before, now it's going to begin to pick up again. Falcon 9 is into its checkouts of first and second stage propulsion systems and engines. That's in preparation for propellant loading. We're going to hear polls between T-minus 47, T-minus 45 minutes on readiness for propellant loading and then on to launch. And then at T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading will begin. Now on Dragon, we've done our checkouts. Everything is looking good. The astronauts are currently inside Dragon. The hatch is closed, and the leak check is successfully complete. The SpaceX folks have left the access area and I believe are now clear of the blast area. So we'll have two major events coming up on Dragon. Between T-minus 45 and T-minus 42 minutes, we're going to see that crew access arm currently alongside Dragon. That's going to retract away from the capsule. And then we'll follow that pretty much immediately by arming of the Dragon launch escape system. That needs to be armed prior to loading propellant onto the Falcon 9. We're launching out of historic pad 39A from the Eastern Range. The range is green and go to support launch, not only here, also the worldwide network of ground stations and the on-orbit tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support Dragon as it heads to orbit. And the good news, weather continues to be acceptable both at ground level and the upper altitude.
Dragon SpaceX, we are cycling the orbit tank isolation valves to equalize pressure.
Heard the call out from Core. They're cycling the valves to equalize pressure. Now, as a reminder, we have an instantaneous launch window today at 27 minutes, 17 seconds after the hour. So once we get into propellant loading, there's no opportunity to change the T0. Once we get in the propellant loading, and actually right now, we're committed. We can't slow down or add some more margin time. We've got to finish up the last 62 minutes. But the good news, Jesse, at just inside T-minus 62 minutes, we are go for launch.
It's great to hear, John. Sounds like everything is going back to normal, is that right? We've got an extensive history now of flying Falcon 9 from the Florida coast, and earlier this year we completed a test run of the mission that we're just an hour away from beginning here today.
And the purpose of that mission was to demonstrate Dragon's capability to safely and reliably fly humans
let's have a look
to and
around
from
here now,
the
sitting back
International
down.
Space Station. The
Menu
success of
updates
Demo
there.
2 was a truly exciting moment and paved the way for today's mission.
And Dragon SpaceX valve cycling is complete.
Valve cycle complete.
Dragon copies.
And good words from Core to the crew. But that mission paved the way for where we are today, sending this full crew for a long duration expedition aboard the International Space Station.
Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. As Liam mentioned earlier, SpaceX has successfully completed 23 flights of Dragon to and from orbit since 2010, including 22 trips to the International Space Station. Not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
Much of what was learned with Cargo Dragon was leveraged in the design of this vehicle. It's fully
I haven't really
autonomous,
started,
which means
Gilly.
it can basically fly itself.
I
but
haven't had
also
the time to
features
really.
full manual
I have to list
override
out what has to be
capabilities
done
in case of
to
emergency.
do that process. I'm
Falcon and
slowly
Anton
transition. Like I have to
tested these
transition game by
capabilities
game,
during the
right?
Demo 2 mission
So
to
we're
the
not done with
station.
DD, so I haven't done that
Many
yet.
of the other enhancements help towards SpaceX's
I
goal
want to
of
have
reusability
it transition
and
by the
less
time DD2
refurbishment
comes out
time
effectively.
between missions. So
But
let's take
I've
a
had other
closer
things I
look at
want
some
to do
of
with
these
sailing
advancements.
and
Standing at
playing
almost
Valhalla.
27 feet tall from bottom of the trunk to top of the nose cone, Crew Dragon is composed of two main
Dragon
elements.
SpaceX, just passing T-minus 1 hour.
yeah.
We'll go for section 6.
We are
when
under
ready,
1 hour.
Report go for launch.
I'm moving away from Scorepod just because they haven't been updating as quickly as I would like with some of the changes Twitch is making, and I don't have Gilly and I both don't have confidence that those changes are going to happen. So T-minus 60 minutes, some statistics for today's launch. Valhalla is addicting. It's a great game. 98th launch of Falcon 9 since 2010. 106th launch of Falcon 9 or Falcon Family since 2006. First launch of this booster, B1061. 86th SpaceX launch from Kennedy Space Center. 121st launch from 39A in its history.
Opposite the nose cone is the trunk. It provides attachment points for
27th launch for SpaceX from 39A. Third launch of the Crew Dragon spacecraft. We have DM1, DM2 patches behind me. We have all three of them. And get those down if you want to see them. Second Falcon 9 Crew Dragon launch with humans aboard. 21st Falcon 9 launch of 2020, believe it or not. 21st time Falcon 9's flown this year. Most of those have been Starlink, DPS satellites. Berlin, I know how you play games, dude. There's so much to do in that game. Like I said the other day, there's this whole single-player, multiplayer thing I'm doing. It's a good single-player thing.
And you can expect the next call to be the C brief at T-minus 45.
25th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral this year. So most of the launches from Kennedy this year have been
exciting. We just got
Falcon
confirmation that Dragon is go for launch. The next call coming up will be from the launch director. So exciting.
Yep, the next call will be from the launch director in about 15 minutes or so. It'll be go for prop load.
Are made of carbon fiber,
and then you'll start to see that LOX vent thing coming off the craft.
Crew members flying on board.
That control panel is centered between the pilot and the commander's seats. You can see it a little bit here on the right side of your screen.
The reason the launch sites tend to be near the equator is because you want to be in that position for equatorial type targets. If you want to be targeting polar, then places are a little, exactly, the spin boost. You get it. If you're launching polar, then going further north is okay. Or south. For the same reason that those launches take place in French Guiana for Ariane space, right? Close to the equator, they want that spin boost.
NASA having certified SpaceX for these missions.
They want to chase from the east coast of continents and have all that free water to their east and use the spin of the Earth against them to gain that velocity.
Mission to the International Space Station.
Part of it is boarding into the ocean. They want to have all that free range with the ocean there. But like Vandenberg's on the west coast, right? Because they're not firing and aiming east. They're aiming northwest most of the time. There's also a small rocket company trying to do their first launch out of Alaska right now. It's been aborted 4 times because of stuff, but they're learning, and that's what they do.
So we're at T-minus 56 minutes and 37 seconds, and we're just getting closer and closer to that T0. So exciting.
But generally speaking, for near equatorial or geosync launches, or if you want to hit your target at the equator, launching from as close to the equator as possible is what you want.
3 hours ago, the SpaceX team helped the crew put on their
and you
suits
want to be
and
launching
conduct
against the
initial
spin of the Earth.
checkouts before crew walkout. Crew walkout was where Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi gave final goodbyes with friends and family gathered outside the operations and checkout building before they began that roughly 20-minute ride to pad 39A.
And what a cool ride that was. What you're seeing on your screen is them getting into their vehicles, waving goodbye. We got some great footage.
No, I actually there's excitement there, but I mean, being in obviously space flight is different than other things. But even when you're getting into F-16, there was excitement, but there's an emotional coldness that exists there where you just kind of cool off, your head gets cold, and you get about doing the job.
The astronauts entered the vehicle, and the SpaceX team performed a serise of checks to
I think the excitement is there, but I don't think it overrides anything. Obviously, there's a little bit of boy, we're doing this, but there's a thing in the military you have to learn is that emotional coldness so that you're not overcome by it.
To discuss the go/no-go for propellant load, but about 15 minutes
the suits are
ago,
light. They're designed for safety inside the capsule. They're not designed for much else. They are pressurized, but they're not going to keep them alive if there's a hull breach.
Things will pick up as we get close to that go/no-go to begin propellant loading and arming the launch escape system.
The crew will pull for readiness, which was
So the launch escape
completed
system
just
is what
about
they showed
5
earlier.
minutes ago.
Those two large, or
And the
you see them
Dragon
right
pull
here.
for prop loading,
You see
was
these
just
large
called
sections
out
right
not
here.
too long ago.
These cutouts
Next
that are
up at T
right along the
45 minutes
edge
will
of the
be an
fuselage.
internal
The
mission
Super
control
Dracos
hopper
live
pull,
inside of
and
those
then the launch
housings,
director's pull
and the
for
Super
propellant
Dracos
loading.
are the abort
When we
system.
get to about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract, and the crew will get
And
the
they're
call
basically going
close
to
their
arm that
visors
because
and
they
arm
want
the
those
launch
armed
escape system.
prior
This is the
to
automated system in place that
prop
can fire
being
the
loaded.
8
So if there's
Super
actually a
Draco
combustion
thrusters
incident,
on
they want to
Dragon
be able to
quickly
fire that
separate the crew
capsule
from the
off the
rocket,
top of that
either on
rocket,
the
even
pad
if
or
it's not
during
flying.
the flight on the ride uphill.
And then once we reach about T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading for Falcon 9 will begin. We've heard some chatter about whether they're go, no go, continuing those polls. And throughout the countdown, we've been getting some pretty incredible views of the astronauts inside Dragon, making their final preparations, as well as some close-up views of the suits. The teams have often described those suits as
Like
an
the pad,
extension
the arm
of
started
the
to move
Dragon
there for a minute.
spacecraft. It's almost a mini spacecraft inside a spacecraft. They're all custom fitted, just as we were discussing
not a
earlier.
mini spacecraft.
And I think it's
Just
very
a
interesting as well.
safety
Their
suit.
seats are
Has
custom
no
fitted
propellant.
too, so nobody gets to really choose where they sit today. It's already been decided. And with that, we want to hear a little bit more
Dragon
from
SpaceX for this place.
And go ahead for display.
No rocket jetpack.
I just wanted to
No
check if we
MMUs.
did notice that on the left side of the display looks like possibly one of the iPads, one of the tablets is still in there. Is there when are you planning on bringing that down?
And we were going to get that right prior to the LES Army.
Copy all.
So they still have one of their iPads not attached to their legs.
the core
LES is
speaking with Dragon. The
launch
crew
escape
also has
system.
some tablets
They're
they can
asking
use
when
to
they wanted
monitor
it.
the
Like, why is that
milestones
not
of the
stowed yet?
mission.
When are you planning to
But
stow
for
it?
right now, we want to hear a little bit
They said
more
right
from
before
the
LES arm.
KSC side. So, Daryl.
Yeah, thank you very much. Back here at the Kennedy interview desk, and you know, we talk a lot about the astronauts.
So that's
what they're
Lucy
doing in
Lowe,
preparation
National
for the
Institutes of
region,
Health. I know
but
I'm
they have
covering
a
up
lot
the
of work to
banner
do.
there.
They're going to be doing some science, and joining me now is Dr. Lucy Lowe from the National Institutes of Health with one of the
No,
hundreds
they're
of
not gone. They have not
experience,
departed the pad yet.
experiments that
They
our
have left
astronauts are
the
gonna be
arm.
working
There's
on.
no
And
report that
so
they have
one
left
of
the
them, the big one
BBA.
that you're working on and studying is
Or that
called
they're out of it
tissue
yet. They may
chips.
be
So,
gone. They just didn't
Lucy,
report it.
what exactly is a tissue chip?
But I'm pretty sure that they would have caught that on the
Great
white
question,
in the
Daryl.
white
Thanks very
room.
much. Great to be here this evening. So a tissue chip, this is an example of a tissue chip. It's a tiny bioengineered device that contains human cells, and it's designed so that it mimics the structure and function of human cells and organs in this tiny little device. And so the idea is that we can use these to understand human physiology, we can use them to model diseases, and we can even use them to test drugs and therapeutics in human systems before they go into humans, for example, in clinical trials. So really they're just models that we can use to model disease and then test therapeutics for safety and efficiency.
Taking actual tissue that's been genetically engineered, right, and to see how
Not
it reacts?
necessarily, no. So
Some
there's
of it's
lots
real.
of different ways that you can put cells on these chips. You
Okay.
can buy them, but you can also use stem cell
That's what I'm
technologies
asking.
to actually create cells from all kinds of different organs and tissues.
What's the benefit
heart,
of
liver,
doing
lungs,
those tests in
skin, brain,
microgravity?
bone. Lots and lots of different kinds of tissues can be created from stem cells, and they can be put onto these tissue chips, and then you can model diseases and all sorts on a little chip like this.
Fascinating. We're looking at some video, I believe, of one of these tissue chips being put together. Kind of explain us through what we're seeing.
So what you're seeing there is one of our kidney chips that the Tissue Chips in Space program from the National Institutes of Health and the ISS National Lab has been funding. So this chip here is actually, it's being seeded here. You're seeing that blue fluid coming through in those little triangles, those little squares are cells that are being placed into the chip. And they're put in there with this pink stuff, this extracellular matrix that keeps them alive and keeps them bubbling away, happily chatting to each other over the course of a few weeks. And so what you're seeing there then with the blue fluid coming through
I know.
is how we
You're
feed
not answering
those
the question,
cells
but I have
during
the
that
answer.
time that they're up on the space station.
Got to keep them alive.
Exactly. They need all their nutrients, they need all their stuff that keeps them feeling good up there.
So what is the benefit of an experiment like this? What can we
Microgravity
glean
accelerates
from
the
this
aging
and
process.
hopefully in the
Yeah,
future?
so that's a great question, Daryl. So when astronauts go up to the space station, they have a lot of changes that they see in their bodies that look very similar to certain kinds of disease states or even aging down here on Earth. So when we put cells onto tissue chips and we send them to the space station, we're able to see the same kinds of changes that might happen to the astronauts, but on a very, very short time scale. So for example, diseases that might take months or years or even decades
They're
to
speeding
actually
up
be a clinical
the
problem down here
time
on
that
space,
the
on
disease
Earth, can actually be modeled in
is
space in just a couple
doing
of
what it
weeks.
does
So
because
we can
space
really
does that.
accelerate the disease modeling using these tissue chips and then see how different drugs and therapies act
Actually
on them.
really cool.
So we're super excited that some of the Crew 1 folks
Those
might
of
be
you
doing
that
some
want
research for us. So
information
thanks very much,
about
guys.
chips in space,
Fascinating,
which
and
is
thank you very
brand
much,
new to
Dr.
me,
Lucy Lowe, for being with us
you
here
can have
from the National
a look
Institutes
there.
of Health. That was a fascinating experiment, and we hope the astronauts get some good work on it so that you can further develop.
Yep, and they're giving it a known
your
quantity. Yep.
research.
So if you want information on
All
chips
right,
in
very good.
space,
And so now we'll
that is
toss it back
the
to Hawthorne,
National
California,
Institute of
and
Health
John and I for the
link
latest
for the Chips in
at
Space
T-minus
project. You can
49
read
minutes
more
and
there. I'm going to leave that tab open, so I'm going to read it. That's really cool that they're using known quantities of tissues and diseases, and they can model those on those chips and then leverage the accelerating aging process that happens in space and microgravity to get better, basically speed their research up.
Currently, we're doing an electronic poll of the 7 members of the SpaceX launch team.
That's really cool.
For their go to load propellant. And
Yeah,
then
science
to
is
turn
almost
on
always
with
cool.
launch.
Sometimes it's like, really, that's awesome
Now,
cool.
the Falcon launch crew is located in Firing Room 4 in the Launch Control Center, adjacent to the historic Vehicle Assembly Building on Kennedy Space Center. Key NASA
I'll pop that link
members are also
into
located
Mission
in the
Control
firing
Channel
room.
and Discord as well,
Now, what
so
we're
that you
waiting
guys
for
can
right now is we
refer
expect
to it.
about
It's
T
something we
minus
talked about
47
here. If you want to read
minutes
it
to hear the
later, so you're
results
not
of the poll.
reliant upon chat for it. It's going in there
While
now.
we're waiting to hear that, a couple other status items. The crew is currently on board, and the crew access
Thanks,
arm
John.
is about to be
Crew's
retracted.
on board.
You can
That
see
is
the
awesome.
access arm currently in the pre-launch position alongside the Dragon capsule. We'll rotate that out of the way, then we'll arm the launch escape system on
So if
Dragon
LES
before
arm
we
is coming
go
up
into
soon, that
loading
arm has to come
propellant on the
back
Falcon 9.
relatively soon.
We're launching out of pad 39A, heading northeast out of the eastern range. The range
It definitely
continues to
could.
be go
It could
for
lead
launch.
to
They're monitoring
significant
clearance
improvements in
area
human
around the
lifespan.
launch pad, as well as the air and sea space around the flight corridor. Now, the good news on the weather front.
Like if they
we
can
have been
address
given a new
accelerated
probability
kidney
of
function,
violation of only 20%, or as the
and
optimist would
maybe
say, 80%
at least
chance
of keeping
of
people
good
off
weather.
dialysis at such an early
There's a
point,
small
or
chance
being
of
able
a
to prevent
shower,
it,
but it would
prevent
have
the
to
need.
pop up
Those are
pretty
all
much right
amazing
over the
questions that could
pad
be
here
answered,
at
or at
the
least
last minute.
the door to answers could be
They're
opened by that
looking,
program.
Ground winds are cooperating, upper altitude winds are
Yep,
cooperating.
and that's
So
you just
the
said
weather
we
officer
may have
gave us
never
some
been able to
good
crack
news
that door
about
open
10
without
minutes
going to
ago
space.
As we got inside of T-1 hour. Now we're coming up on T-minus 47 minutes. And
So
the
we're at
SpaceX team is
6:40
finishing up
p.m.
their
Eastern
donut
time.
go
We're
polls.
within the
waiting for a few
window
more
where
people
the
to give
the call will be made for
electronic
prop
thumbs
load.
up.
They will not make
So
that call
then
until the
SpaceX
launch escape
launch
system is
director
armed,
can,
and that arm starts
check
going
that
back.
item off, and then proceed into the remainder of the countdown, which will include propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. So let's listen in for a moment to the countdown net.
I can just bring their audio up. They have two streams. One is the presentation like a TV show, and one is nothing but the ComNet.
Dragon SpaceX for ARM timeline.
And go ahead for the ARM timeline.
Yeah, we were just talking here about the tablet and how much time you'll have to put it away. Essentially, as soon as the T-minus 45 minute brief occurs, we're going to begin retracting the arm, and we'd like to be ready to arm the launch escape system immediately, as soon as that's complete.
They're basically saying put the tablet away.
And Dragon copies. We will go ahead and take care of that now.
Second time they've asked. Take the hint. They want the tablet stowed.
Copy all. Thank you.
Heard a little bit of dialogue
Like
there
being a flight
between
attendant.
Core and the Dragon crew,
Sure.
looking at
We're preparing for landing.
the, computer
Please put your
notebook
laptop
that they're,
away.
Getting ready to put away, letting the crew
I'll do
know
it right
what the
before landing
timeline
gear
would
come out.
be once we finish the go no go poll and we give the instructions to the launch team at T-minus 45. Then we'll proceed into retract of the axis.
All right, so
arm.
let's run down what's
See
going to happen here in the
currently
next little
alongside
bit.
of Dragon, and then we'll go into arming of the escape system. Pardon me. Years
So,
of, previous
back to the
experience.
checklist, which is now
And then
way down
finally,
this list.
we will get into propellant loading.
Gonna put this in a different list. Way, way, way down here. Way down.
Right now they're getting just the last thumbs up. People have been looking
Okay.
at data that we were
So,
gathering just outside of T
we are at the
1
point
hour
where
as we were doing final checkouts.
crew
of
access
Falcon
armor
9
track
on the
6:45
propulsion and engine
p.m.
systems before we
LES
got
arm
into propellant
6:49
load.
p.m.
Complete, and the team is ready for crew access arm retract, propellant loading, and launch. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD, and they will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed into launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall
That's
call
the
hold
flight director
on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators advise launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. In the event of a fire alarm at firing 4 today, key operators noted below will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personnel safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly south. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Copy, arming crew arm.
So that is the launch director verified go for prop load because he gave the next command, which is crew access armor tracks. You'll see that arm coming back now.
There you've heard it, just inside
And then the
44
LES will
minutes,
get
SpaceX
armed,
launch
and then they
director
will start first and
has
second
announced
stage
polls are
RP1
complete.
fuel
We're
load
go
and the
to
first stage
head into
LOX load.
propellant load. The Dragon team is going to begin retract of the crew access arm.
Stow is running.
So Kate, with that, everything continuing to look good. We're right on time in the countdown.
What I'm going to do is copy this entire checklist into a text document for myself
Thanks
so
for
I
that,
don't go
John
mad
I.
trying to find it again.
And it looks like the crew access arm has already begun to retract away. Just a beautiful sight.
So this is one of the last major visual milestones that we have before launch. So the crew access arm now moving away, and we are T-minus 43 minutes and 15 seconds from launch. We're standing by as we wait for completion of the crew access
To give you an idea how quick this is going to happen, the first stage engine chill won't start until
Shortly
7:20
thereafter,
p.m.
we should
That's
hear the
like
call
7
out
minutes
that
before
the
launch.
escape system is
The
armed.
second stage LOX load won't start until
And after that,
7:11
we will
p.m.,
hear that
which is
F9 prop
16
loading
minutes before
has
launch.
begun.
Bye, bridge
And
thingy.
now, earlier this evening, we saw NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi suit up. That was about 3 hours ago. They made the drive out to Launch Complex 39A.
Yep.
Ingressed Crew Dragon about 2 hours ago, and the spacecraft hatch was closed a second time after and then they had a successful leak check.
It holds
and again,
7.
We've just seen the crew access arm retract.
There's a 4-row and a
what we
3-row
heard,
seats, but
a
the
few
bottom
moments
3
ago
aren't in
was
for
that Once this
NASA.
process is complete, they are going to go ahead and arm. the
Yeah, that
launch
was actually a
escape
good idea
system
scale. It's a
immediately.
lot bigger than it looks.
So we're going to wait to hear the call out that the crew access arm retraction is complete, and then we'll explain a little bit more about this launch escape system,
Minus
what
42
it
minutes.
is, why it's armed at this point, and why it's so significant.
Well, the TARDIS is a fictitious thing. So you can see kind of here the strong back. Let me get over there. Along the side of it, this white piece. Right before launch, this thing will angle back about 2 degrees. You can see it really clearly right there.
So again, we're at T-minus 41 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. We've just watched the crew access arm retract. That is the
LES arm is
suspended
supposed to be at 3
walkway
minutes.
that attaches the rotating service structure to
fixed service structure.
the fixed service structure. Excuse me, I'm talking shuttle speak. To the Crew Dragon capsule. So we watched
watching the launch.
the arm
Thanks
retract
all
away.
for
So
hanging
now
out.
we see Crew Dragon.
Lots of people lurking, watching rockets. That's awesome. Thanks for being here. If you have any questions about what's going on, what the mission is, what any of this is, Bracket Eye. Thank you for resub. We have T-minus 40 minutes.
So their confirmation from core telling crew
Visors are
that
down,
they are allowed to move on.
and they are
We'll
arming
hear
capsule launch
instructions to move
escape
on to
system
Section
from
6,
Crew
Section
Dragon.
7. That's simply making sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of which procedure we are now working toward. So that was just the core, who is the person that is essentially
And 7:27 and 17 seconds is liftoff.
The crew inside.
Dragon, visors are closed. We are arming the launch escape system.
There is the LES call.
Copy.
I'm glad we can give you something in the background to listen to,
Commander-
Fish, while you do chores. Did most of mine
Mike
yesterday.
Hopkins. Thank you. Commander Mike Hopkins informed that they are now closing their visors and now commanding the launch escape system to be armed. Now the launch escape system is basically the crew's path to safety in the event of an anomaly. Quite
Good
simply.
evening,
If we
Miss
were
Fish,
to
Princess.
have an abort scenario here on the pad, we have demonstrated the efficiency and success of that system, having done a pad abort test. Previously, we did a launch escape system test mid-flight earlier.
T-minus
I believe it was
39 minutes,
January of
30
this year.
seconds.
And so
LES
basically
arm
this
has
is a
been
system
completed
that
by the
could
crew. Visors are down. Prop load will start, which will be first and second stage RP1, which is effectively rocket grade kerosene, and the liquid oxygen load on the first stage.
I only caught the tail end of that, but it sounded like the launch escape system is armed.
It is armed.
So now the launch escape system is armed. Essentially, this is the system that all the way from now on the pad until they are in orbit, the crew would be able to escape safely in the event of an anomaly.
Yep.
That's
if you ever
why
want
it
to
is
see
so
the
important that
LES,
we check the
it's
weather
actually really cool.
all around the world, really.
The
It's not just the
in-flight
weather here at the Cape
uncrewed
that we're
abort
looking
test
at
they
in order
did
to determine if we're
was
go
awesome
or no go.
to watch.
It is
Seeing the Super Dracos fire and seeing the thing just go
along that
fly
entire
away from
escape
the rocket,
corridor.
and it was
Right.
already going that fast.
And
It
as
was
Kate
really
was
sweet.
mentioning, again, the launch escape system is armed. That has to happen before the SpaceX teams will proceed with fueling Falcon 9. And so that propellant loading process is set to begin at T-minus 35 minutes, so just a
Crew
few
Dragon
minutes
launch
from
escape
now.
system verified
and what
armed.
that looks like, Kate, you talked about the tests that were
So,
done. You
three
did a
different
pad
places now
abort test back
verifying
in
the LES is
2015.
armed.
You did an in-flight abort test at the beginning of this year. And so what
Next
that
item on the
looks like
checklist again
in action,
is
if it were to happen,
the
a pad abort test,
load
or,
of propellant,
excuse me, a
then the
pad
first stage
abort
engine chill at
would be
720,
before liftoff.
transitioner
At any
internal
point,
power at 722,
propellant loading,
strong back
which
retract at
begins in just
722,
under 3
47
minutes
seconds.
now, until the moment of liftoff. If something
things
were
really
to
start to
go
fly
wrong
after that.
and the crew were in danger, Crew Dragon can kind of act
You should
as
expect
a rocket
first stage
on top
step
of a rocket
about
and propel
2
itself
minutes,
off
40
of
seconds
Falcon 9 using its
after
8
liftoff.
built-in Super Draco thrusters, right? And so the
And
idea
you should
is
expect
that if
the
that
first stage
happens,
landing on the
Crew
drone ship
Dragon
about 9
would
minutes
splash
after
down
liftoff.
off the coast, and then we would have a rescue scenario.
Correct.
And so we've rehearsed that ahead of time. We coordinate very closely, the NASA and SpaceX teams, with the Department of Defense Detachment
We'll see what that looks
3 to
like
prepare
with the
for a
drone
scenario
ship landing
such
at
as
night. We
that.
don't get very many of those.
We're also prepared for if there were to be a
Again,
need for
why
a
not
launch
land at
escape
Kennedy?
after the
It's
point
the
of
angle
liftoff. At any
that they
point
have to
from
take with
liftoff
crew. You
until
probably will
they
never
reach
see a
orbit
Falcon 9
about
recovery
roughly 12
on
minutes,
land
after
with
liftoff.
crew
At any
aboard.
point in that sequence,
You have to
Crew
fly a
Dragon
shallower
could
angle
still
with
launch
crew on
itself
board in
off
order to
of the
basically get
Falcon
what they're
9 rocket.
going
And
and
in
not
that
risk
scenario,
crew safety.
Crew Dragon would splash down
Then they
at
would
some
take
other
a
location
sharper
further
angle
downrange,
if
farther
they
away
had
from Florida,
a
obviously.
non-crew
And that's
payload.
why the weather
So
downrange
basically
is
being
just
shallower
as important
instead of being
as the weather
higher
around the pad for
in terms of
liftoff,
its
because
ascent.
they're
That
thinking
shallower
about
trajectory
how
means
are
they
we gonna
must get
rescue the
further
crew if we
down
get into a
range to
scenario
be
like
at
that.
specific
Exactly.
speed
So
they
it's
want to
really
be at
complicated,
prior to separation.
but, you
So
know,
that's
it is a
distance
system
from
that
land,
we have
therefore they
spent a
must
lot of
land on the
time
drone ship because they'll be
designing
too
and
far
testing,
from land to recover back at
and
Kennedy.
it's, you know, it's definitely something to consider in terms of that weather criteria that we do look at.
And the reason that's a safety matter is because it has to be within tolerance of the launch
36
escape
minutes
system.
and 20
You're going
seconds,
sharply
just
up,
over a
you
minute,
fire
we
your
should be
capsule up,
hearing,
the rocket could come up and
that
hit it. You're flying
Falcon 9 is
shallow,
ready,
you
for
fire
propellant
away
loading.
and kill the engines,
That'll
or it
be
blows
with
up, you're far enough
RP1,
away.
which is
That's why the
rocket-grade
shallow
kerosene,
versus steep
and then
angle has to be in
also,
effect for a crew launch.
simultaneously, the liquid oxygen loading will begin.
Once we begin loading that liquid
T-minus
oxygen,
36
we'll
minutes.
see plumes of what
Getting
will
close.
appear to be white smoke. It's actually the liquid oxygen vaporizing, turning from liquid form into gas form around the rocket itself in the rather humid Florida air.
And Nicole, I know, we're just about 30
I
seconds
did my
from
laundry
fueling,
last
but
Tuesday.
from your perspective,
I'll do it this
obviously
Tuesday.
this
don't have any
launch
meetings on
escape
my calendar.
capability is not something that the space shuttle had. So from an astronaut's perspective, what's your take on having the ability to abort from the pad or in flight?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome.
So one quick more hit on the weather while they're talking.
With our
Have one more look at it here.
I think anytime you can better ensure the survival of your crew in any
That front line is starting to develop, whether it crosses
space,
basically 2 counties in Florida, 3 counties in Florida, by the time this thing lifts off is, I don't think that'll happen. Cloud cover is cleared up.
So we just heard that call that propellant load has started. That
Good.
means
Prop load
fueling
in
of,
progress.
of Falcon 9 has begun.
I can't leave it out.
Okay,
If I
so
do
we are
laundry, I
now
have to
at
fold it
T-minus
immediately.
34 minutes, 34 seconds and counting.
It'll drive me bananas.
Fueling of Falcon 9 is underway. The launch escape system is armed.
Yeah, so at
And
T-minus
again,
35 minutes,
today
prop load
is the
started.
first in a
RP1 now
series of
flowing into both
6-month
stages.
missions for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. And the Dragon capsule was loaded with propellants about a week and a half ago, just a few miles down the road.
So we're
from
within
us.
that window now where
that's an
anybody
area that
really
we
interested in this
affectionately
launch,
refer
just to
to
see
as
the launch, should
Dragonland.
start probably circulating toward viewing it in some form.
And in order to fly,
Hopefully here.
Dragon needs fuel and an oxidizer. So for the fuel we use, Kate, you're going to have to help me with these words.
Nope.
Yeah, well, I
can't
usually make those comments
so
too, because
it's
you never know
monomethyl
whose
hydrogen,
time it
or
is the
MFH,
first time that they're
and
watching a
nitrogen
rocket launch.
tetroxide or
So it bears explaining it to them so they're not
also known as
confused
NTO
as to
for
why
the
those vaporizing
oxidizer.
clouds of the liquid
These
oxygen
are
are
two
there.
propellants, a fuel and an oxidizer, that when they come into contact, they combust instantaneously. So it's a great propellant to use in spaceflight because you don't need an ignition.
Yep, so they don't
and
think it's on
ignition
fire or
source.
something's wrong.
So
Very
we
normal.
Use, those propellants to maneuver.
Just go back and look at a
Dragon
Saturn
on
V
orbit,
launch, look just how much
and
vapor
those-
is coming
and
off
that-
those rockets
propellants
prior to launch. It's actually
powered
a
the
lot.
Draco engines, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would be utilized in the launch escape system in an abort scenario.
And again, we want to be crystal clear. Now that fueling for Falcon 9 has started, that means that the 8 Super Draco engines built into
on.
Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule.
That's the whole
away
point
from
of turning the
Falcon 9
LES
rocket
on before you
in
put
an
fuel in a
instant,
rocket.
if there is any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or on the pad. Now let's go over to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an operations
Canadians think
update.
it's just vehicle
John?
exhaust because it's cold. It's like 77
Well, we are
down there,
counting
Fahrenheit.
down those final minutes, and everything is still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an
Weather
on-time
is still
launch
go.
just under 33 minutes from now. As you heard, Falcon 9 began propellant loading right on time at T-minus 35 minutes.
Yeah, so it's
Now,
an
the
interesting
propellants that
concept
feed
because
the Merlin
obviously
engine
you can't
power
fill,
Falcon
like when the
9
shuttle
with two
era,
liquids.
the
One liquid is the fuel,
large
the
tank,
other
the
is
large
an
external
oxidizer.
tank, that was
That
not
fuel is a
filled,
refined form
you know,
of
after the
kerosene,
astronauts
also
got on
referred to
board.
as
And the whole
RP1.
system was ready to go
Now,
pretty
our
much the moment the
oxidizer is
astronauts got in
densified
there.
liquid oxygen, also called LOX. Densified means it is kept much colder than typical for
So
launch
physics
vehicles,
time,
and
kids,
it takes up less
whenever
volume. This
you
allows for more
cool something
oxidizer to
off,
be loaded into
the
first and
molecules
second
that make
stages.
up the matter
Now,
stop
to ignite
moving
the fuel
around so
oxidizer
much
in the Merlin
in terms of
rocket
their
engine, we use
electrons
an
orbiting
ignition fluid
protons,
called
and
TTEP.
so you can get them
When
closer and
TTEP
closer and
comes in
closer
contact
together.
with
So the
oxygen,
colder
it
you make
ignites,
something,
and it
the
gives
more
off
of a
a
thing you can
green-colored
press
flame.
together at a molecular
Once
level.
we've got the
So that's
flame
why
going,
they
we can then
chill
add the
the
kerosene
fuel,
fuel into the
super chill
chamber,
it,
and
so
the
they can get
engine
as
goes to
much
main power.
smashed in there as
You might
possible,
see the green flash
pressurizing
just
it.
as the second
Is
stage
it
engine
pressurized,
ignites,
super chilled
following
liquid
stage
oxygen?
separation 2 minutes 48 seconds into tonight's flight. Now currently we're early into propellant loading. The first stage fuel tank is about 10% full.
You
and that
are
first
super
stage
chill,
is
Perm,
the
until a
bottom
video
2/3
game
of the
stumps you for
vehicle.
5
you can
seconds.
See on your screen, you've got the black carbon fiber landing legs, then the white propellant tanks of the first stage, topped off by that black cylinder, the inner stage.
Yes, unfortunately, that
Now, liquid
pressurization,
oxygen loading is
that
also underway
that
on the first
that
stage.
super cool
That
that
loading
makes it
will
possible
begin on
to
the second
effectively
stage, which you can see
compress
on
the
your
mass
monitor,
down
which
of
is
the
the
matter,
cylinder, the
or
white
compress the
cylinder
matter
just above
down
that black
more closely,
entry
limit
stage.
the limited electron movement,
Liquid
etc.,
oxygen loading on
makes
stage
that
2 begins at
pressurization
T-minus
dangerous.
16.5 minutes.
Which is why you
And
want the
we'll
launch
continue
escape
loading
system
liquid
armed
oxygen on both
before
stages
you
until the
begin
last
to
few minutes of the
load that
countdown.
super cold pressurized,
Helium
under
loading
pressure
into
fuel.
pressure
Because
vessels is
remember,
also
inside
underway.
the fuselage
We
is
use that
where
to
they're containing
pressurize
that
the
pressure,
tanks in flight.
but
Is the
they're basically
propellant
sea
pulled
level
out
out there,
by
and
the
there's a
Merlin
huge
turbo
pressure
pumps.
difference between the metal of the
Now, on board
fuselage.
the Dragon
So if there's a
spacecraft,
leak,
the astronauts are monitoring
you run into a
systems
problem.
while propellant is loaded
Cryo helium load.
into the Falcon 9, and the call out you just heard, Ground letting the crew know that helium loading is going on.
So
to
the
vehicle
helium
right now.
that they're loading We talk about kerosene, we talk about liquid
to
oxygen.
this
Where the
right
heck's
now,
helium
as
come
part of
from?
their training
That is
in the
actually
simulator,
to
we also can give them
pressure.
playback
That's
of
the
sounds that we've recorded
pressurization
in
gas.
Dragon capsule during
So basically, the
recent flight.
manifold around
Plus, they also had a discussion with Bob
where
and
they're
Doug
loading the
after their
fuel
flight,
has to be
who
pressure.
related
Has
what
to have
their
that
flight experience
external
was like
pressure from
earlier
the
this year.
exterior of the fuselage because of the pressure
Out on
difference.
the
To
Eastern
keep it
Range, we
pressurized, to keep
continue
it pressed
to
together,
hear
and
they're
that's
green,
they use
ready to
helium for that.
go. There are no problems, and they are go for launch. And finally,
And again,
the
that
weather,
helium
as
is
I mentioned a
super
little while
cold, so they can
ago,
put as much
it's
of it
actually
in there as
improved during
possible.
the day. We're down to 20% probability of violation.
Within the tolerance
the biggest
of
thing
all
we're
the metal.
watching is just in case in these last
So there's an
half
update
hour,
on weather.
if a rain shower
Launch
might
weather
spring
team
up
at the
within a mile or
45th
two of the launch pad.
Weather Squadron
But
now
currently,
predicts
the,
80%
rain
chance
looks like
of
it's
acceptable
holding
weather
off.
for
The
liftoff.
upper altitude winds are good, and the ground winds
That's an
are
increase
very
of
light.
30%.
Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous
nice inert
launch time.
gas.
So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity.
This is why you
just
pay
under
attention
3
in your
days
science
from now.
classes in school. If you're
Let's
a
turn
kid
it
and you're
over to
watching,
Jesse and Leah for an overview of
understanding
events after
that
liftoff.
a solid is a solid is a
Thanks,
solid,
John.
right? But the
For
molecules
Crew
that
1, the
comprise the
astronauts'
solid
flight
are still in
station will take
motion.
about 27.5
It's the rate
hours,
at
and
which
the journey
something is in
much
motion
longer,
that kind of
but
defines its
fairly
physical state as
similar to the
liquid,
trip
gas, or
NASA
solid.
astronauts Doug Hurley
So,
and Bob Behnken made earlier this
keeping
year
something
in Crew Dragon's
cool
first mission with humans
and pressurizing molecules
As we
together
await T0 in
it's just a
about
matter of
29
understanding
minutes,
how that
the ground
physics and that
operations
chemistry
teams are
works
doing
while
a
you're in school.
series
So
of
it's if
systems
you want
checks
to
to
know
make sure both
really
Dragon
well
and
how that
Falcon
functions,
9
pay
are
attention
ready
in
for
school.
launch. You're looking at
Because
a
it's really
live view
cool
of
if you
our
understand
teams
it.
at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff.
Like understanding
Now,
that
as we
effectively
wait
every
for the
outer
launch
shell
clock to
of
hit zero, we
a chemical
wanted to
bond
give you
is
an
comprised
overview
of
what
a
the
number of
ascent
8, either
portion
8
of the
electrons
mission will
present
look
or
like.
number of
Once
missing
we hit
electrons that allow
T0
different
and a
members that have different
successful
number of
launch
electrons in their
occurs,
outer
we
shell
will
to
watch
bond
Falcon
together
9
to
and
fill that
Dragon
number 8.
lift off from historic launch
Basically,
pad
in your
39A
first year of
and
chemistry,
make
you'll
their
learn that.
ascent.
It's
At
really
about 50
easy
seconds
to
into
learn. It's
flight,
really interesting to
Falcon
understand
9's
why
Falcon's 9
salt
engines will
is so
throttle
common.
down to help
Because
pass through the period of
sodium,
maximum dynamic
chloride,
pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer
chloride,
to as
they
max Q. It's worth noting that
bond
once
because
we hit
of a
max
matching
Q,
number
the
of
vehicle
present
will
and
be
missing
going
electrons.
supersonic.
Once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our Merlin engines again. And from there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight,
Science
we
is
have a series
super cool.
of 3 events that will happen in rapid
I
succession.
hated biology.
First
I
is
loved
MECO, or main engine
chemistry,
cutoff.
and I
This
loved
is where
physics.
all 9 Merlin N1D
I love
engines
chemistry
shut
so much
off
that I
in
initially went to college to
preparation
become
for
a
stage separation,
Glad I didn't do it, though,
which
'cause
is
I
our
had-
second event.
When I got
This
in
is where the
in
first
OChem
stage
and they started
detaches
talking
from
about
the
the angle at
second
which
stage, with the
molecules
first
form their
stage
bonds, I was
making
like,
its
why
way
do I
back to
care?
Earth
And I
for
really, I
landing,
don't love chemistry
as the
that
second
much.
stage continues
Now I
on
care,
its
but I
journey
didn't
with
then.
the third event. SES, or second stage engine start 1, is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew 1 astronauts to orbit.
As stage 2 heads
If they
towards
named
its
things
targeted
differently in
drop-off
OChem,
orbit,
Fish, I
stage
probably
1
would have
will
been like,
execute
yeah,
2
but
burns
there's
in order to make its
alkenes and
way back to
alkanes and
Earth.
alkynes,
The
and I'm like,
first is
can
the
we have a
entry
word
burn,
that
where
doesn't
3
mean the
of
same as the other
M1D
word except for
engines
3
will reignite
letters?
and then shut down. This helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we will wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
And about 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon
That's the
9
part
will
you're gonna
land
want to
back
watch
on
because that's
Earth.
really
The
that's
landing
the
burn,
sexy
which is
part.
a single engine burn,
That one over
will
there.
bring the vehicle
Pointing the wrong
speed
way.
down
That one over
rapidly
there.
in order to land on the drone ship about
Those
9.5
legs come out,
minutes
nothing
into
lands.
the
That's the super cool part after
While
liftoff.
Falcon 9 first stage is landing, Dragon
So
is
we'll
preparing
stick
to
with it
separate from the second stage. At about 3
About to
minutes
the point
after
that
the second
Dragon
stage
makes
gets
this
into orbit,
separation.
we
They're
should
talking about
have
right
a
now
great
about
view of
T+12,
Dragon
and we're
with
going to
its
make sure they're on a good
4-person
track, back, and then we'll probably
from the second stage. Once Dragon
call
is
it a night at that point, and then we'll come back tomorrow night at 11 p.m. earlier, a little bit before 11 p.m. Those who want to be awake will BOSA TV the approach.
It's worth noting that these are
docking
not
with
the
ISS.
Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
And about 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone
That's the
deploy
last
sequence will begin.
real big event.
It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or GNC, that will help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next 27.5 hours, Dragon will begin its approach phase, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way to station. All of that will be coming up soon.
Stage 2 cryohelium load.
So that was stage 2 cryo-helium load, so pressurizing stage 2.
Confirmation stage 2 cryo-helium being loaded now, but for now, let's check back in with Marie at Kennedy Space Center. Marie?
All right,
T-minus
thank you,
25
Leah.
minutes, 10 seconds.
We are now at T-minus 25 minutes, 5 seconds and counting from the second astronaut launch from U.S. soil this
So
year.
milestones
and
coming up
with 4
is
astronauts
in
aboard
about
Crew Dragon.
9 minutes. Second stage launch load begins. And then 9 minutes after that, first stage engine chill begins.
To speak live with the president of
And I agree, it's so cleanly done at this point that it looks almost like it's faked. But if you experience the earlier days with SpaceX and how
and I'm going to
many rockets fell off that thing or blew up on that thing, it's
Dr. Yamakawa, konnichiwa.
Really cool to see them pull it off so regularly now.
Could you tell us about the partnership between JAXA and NASA?
Oh, thank you very much for your question. The US and Japan have built a close relationship in the aerospace field for more than 50 years. And NASA and JAXA have been collaborating in many fields, including earth science, space exploration, human space activities, and aeronautics. Astronaut Noguchi participates in the Crew 1 mission as the first foreign astronaut on board a US commercial spacecraft. This shows a trust relationship between the two countries. We recognize that this mission is an important milestone toward future international space exploration.
And being the very formal country he is, he's reading it from script.
From the ground.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us a little bit more about today's mission and what the mission represents for Noguchi-san?
Well, as the first Japanese astronaut on board 3 different spacecraft, Space Shuttle, Soyuz, and Crew Dragon, I'm sure he will play an outstanding role based on past experiences. Experiments on the ISS are expected to contribute to the advancement of people's lives on Earth. Protein crystal growth experiments in microgravity environment may lead to the development of new medicine. Japanese private companies are also
organic crystal growth experiments. Really cool.
Module Kibo for the initiatives.
Mention it twice, but you grow crystals in space because gravity can adversely affect their normal development.
Thank you.
You get a more symmetric crystal growth in space and microgravity.
Last question. Looking a little bit towards the future. I know recently Japan, along with 7 other countries, including the United States, recently signed the Artemis Accords. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Artemis Accords and what that means for future space exploration?
They don't know because the administration is going to change.
Well,
the United States is going to affect
last
Artemis.
month in October, the Japanese government signed the Artemis Accords,
the cooperation agreement between international partners to get to the moon effectively. But everything with that's going to be kind of variable now. The moon by 2024 goal, I believe, is pie in the sky now. Simply because changing the party that's going to take power in the United States doesn't fund space travel as much.
We will continue and deepen our
So I would expect SLS, which is supposed to be about a year from now, that first launch, that uncrewed launch to slip
to our society on Earth.
We'll see.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and arigato gozaimashita. Thank you for your time this morning, and I'll pass it back to you, Tahira. Thank you, and back.
All right, so we just took a look at numbers across all of our social channels, and there are over 500,000 people tuning into this broadcast right now.
More than that.
The hashtag Launch America.
I don't think NASA gets that what happens here.
Last time we checked. And
there are other people like me who are streaming for different types of communities. Like there's EJ and there's the NASA space flight crew. They're doing things on a much more engineering focus level for super nerds that want to talk about the really specific things that are occurring in those spacecrafts. But there's lots of people out there that are streaming for audiences.
So many cute space pups today.
But this is what they want to focus on is look how much people like NASA. And that's cool. I mean, I'm wearing a flight suit. My mom helped me make.
Okay, let's go next.
At some point, there should be some discussion about, the people who are doing a lot of things that are actually helping people in science.
The first time I saw.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great science tech streamers on Twitch.
Check out how awesome Kiana looks in her blue flight suit, and I mean, wishing her hero Victor Glover well on his Launch America mission. So, you've seen it there. And for those of you at home, thank you for sharing a piece of what this
There would
mission
be nice
means
if there
to
was
you with us.
some sort of media
And in these
partnership
final
program
moments,
where you could,
let's check in with Shaniqua
get,
at Mission
even if I could
Control
just
in
get access to
Houston.
materials
Shaniqua,
where it
what's
was,
the latest?
I could get, I'm working off of checklists I'm getting secondhand because those people are getting them because they're media and they're their first party. But if there was a way to provide people who are interested in doing things like this, I'd like to have access to that material, especially, because it's a public agency.
Everything is nominal, and the station will be ready to receive Dragon tomorrow. NASA Flight Director Anthony Varia has been leading the operations planning between the joint NASA and SpaceX teams for the Crew 1 mission. And with the mission
I don't know,
about to
Gilly. I
begin,
mean,
he passed on
COVID
this to the teams. No matter the
COVID cost
spacecraft,
is
our jobs remain the
logistics.
same. We will protect the crew. We will protect the vehicle.
The cost
and
of
we will perform
COVID
our
relief
mission.
is going to
We
be
remain
logistics
tough
once this
and
vaccine
competent.
makes,
We
it's
operate
90%
with
effective.
resilience.
Pfizer vaccine makes it through.
Anthony and team are on console here in Mission Control for
Assuming
launch and will be
Pfizer
back
doesn't
tomorrow for
gouge it.
docking. A reminder that a launch today will take about 27 and a
That'd
half
be a
hours
PR
to get
disaster
to
if they try to
station.
make people pay for it.
Docking Monday to the Node 2 forward port scheduled at 10 p.m. Central Time, 4 a.m. GMT. Once Dragon is fully docked to the station, the team
Yeah,
here in Houston will
what you
assist
said,
the
being able to
Dragon and
integrate this
SpaceX
community into
station,
what they're doing there, like
station astronauts
more
with
than
leak
just
checks as they work
observational.
to open hatches on both Dragon
Like,
and
provide
inside
me
the
with a
pressure-
telemetry
the
stream that I can turn into
pressurized
data that I
mating
can show
adapter.
here, right? This is what the
We
rocket
expect
is.
hatch open to
You know,
take
I'm
approximately
relying
2
on
hours
local clocks
to
and
take place
timers.
approximately 2
Give
hours
us those
after
tools.
docking.
That would be really cool.
That's it for us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Florida. Marie?
If I have a telemetry feed that
All
can
right,
make
thank you
usable
so
as a
much,
visual
Shaniqua.
overlay, that'd be
we
amazing.
are inside of T-minus 19 minutes until launch. So exciting. We started the day with 50%
So we're coming close up on second stage. Look, we're watching load.
80% chance of the weather cooperating. So we are so excited. I know we're going to be turning our attention solely to the pad and going over to Hawthorne.
Interesting that they have those plexiglass shields there. They didn't have those plexiglass shields at the mock-up model they had, and they weren't wearing masks when they were
Shannon
there.
was talking about her path to becoming an astronaut. She talked about how she was 4 years old when she decided that that's what I want to do. And it really
So
stuck out
for
to me because
Woozle,
my 4-year-old
that's
daughter
normal.
is
That's the
watching, and
vaporizing
she's
of the
dreaming
liquid
about
oxygen that's
becoming
coming
an
off the
astronaut.
rocket
And
as
it's
it's pressurized.
special for, I think especially for little girls, maybe I'm biased, but to be able to have a role model like Shannon and like you, Nicole, because at the time when Shannon was 4 years old, women weren't astronauts.
Second stage RP-1 fuel
and
tank
what an
reported
amazing
fully
time
loaded
to
for
be
launch.
in when little girls have women to look up to, and African American children have Victor Glover to look up to, and see that they're
The chill down
represented and
of
they
the
can do
strong
this
back,
too.
basically making it temperature safe with respect to
NASA
everything
and the
else that's
world
going on
of
here has
space
started,
exploration, from the human space
so that they can
side
get
for
the
sure
the
has
locks
been,
loaded into the Falcon
over
9
the
upper
years,
stage.
just so progressive in understanding how this diversity is so important. And I love thinking about your 4-year-old daughter watching launch tonight and being excited about this.
So if you
And
have
I'm
your
thankful
kids
to be
watching,
here tonight
welcome
with you
in.
ladies
We do this
kind
with
of
rocket
represent.
launches. If you're out there, you're school aged,
super excited.
welcome to
I have
BOSA,
seen
which is a
SpaceX launches
function
before.
of the
I've
Big Top
seen
Outlaws
shuttle
gaming and
launches
streaming
before,
community.
but I've never
We
been
cover
this
rocket
close to
launches
the launch
because
pad.
they're interesting and there's a way to get
And I'm
kids
just-
interested in
my
science.
palms are sweaty
Tonight we're
with
launching
excitement.
4 astronauts from Kennedy
it's
Space
gonna be
Center at
incredible.
Launch Pad
Night
39A
launches
to the
here,
International
they
Space
just light up
Station,
the
and it's
sky.
historic.
And so I'm
The
super
first time
excited, and I
4
can't even
astronauts will
imagine,
launch in a capsule
I
vehicle
think a lot
from
about
Earth.
Victor Glover this evening, 'cause
If you
as
have
we
any
said before,
questions,
this is his first
please
time
feel
going to
free
space.
to
He has
ask. I will
thousands
do
of
my
hours
best to
as a
answer
test pilot, like a
anything that
super
you are
impressive
curious
resume,
about.
and
But we
this is his
encourage
first time
you
going to
to
space,
hang
and
out,
I'm so
watch,
excited for him
learn,
to be
ask
part of
questions,
this
and
mission
enjoy what
get
science
to go
can
to
do.
the ISS after a long wait.
Yeah,
And I get that, Berlin.
Let me just tell
My
you
my
that
science
they,
brain doesn't
the
do
4 of them
creative.
are
Like,
going
don't
to,
take me to an art museum. It's
do
lost on me.
amazing work there, and it's been mentioned a couple times before. This partnership that we
I'm
have
like, what
that's
makes
allowing
that
us to do
masterpiece
such
different from
incredible
that one?
things that are just ultimately about improving life on Earth. Very cool.
And Nicole, I think it's worth
If at any
mentioning,
point
we
I
didn't talk
decided
about
to
this
stream and
earlier,
launch from
and I
KSC,
know
you'd be my cameraman.
you
We'd have
are
to
a
do
very
it from the
humble
bridge
person, and you're
or
focused on
the
crew
key,
that's on the pad right
just
now, but
to
you were the last
because we wouldn't get credentialed,
resident
but we could definitely do it.
International Space Station crew member.
And that is what's
to
cool about
launch
people. Is we're all
from and
different,
then
and those
land,
differences are what make us
on
all
back on U.S. soil. So I
exceptional
think that's significant.
because there are things my 22-year-old son can do that I can't do.
You know, weird to think that was that long ago, but you know, I don't think any crew members go.
There's no such thing as normal. We're all different.
You know what first or last it is.
Appreciating what is different about us that
at
makes
Kennedy
us
Space Center for 10 years
a community of
as
individuals.
a NASA
We all come
engineer
together.
and
We
to
all
be
go.
able to, you know,
Gilly's
support a mission like that
a great
and
coder,
be here watching
and
this tonight.
Mads
really
is a
historic
great
event.
people person.
This is
And
the
Perm
place
is
we would learn,
great
that
at
there is
dying
a
in video
solution
games.
to every challenging
And
problem.
those things just
and in the
make
words
us
of a person
all
I mentioned earlier, Mr.
appreciate
Honeycutt,
who
here's
each other
how we
is.
can, not why we
So
can't. And
good at
that's
science,
what
bad
we
at
saw going on
science.
tonight as well.
Good at art, bad at art.
Absolutely.
Hope you're hanging
And
out,
with
having fun, and
T-minus
experiencing
15
what this
minutes,
is. We're
10
at T-minus
seconds
15 minutes and 10
counting to
seconds.
we want to focus in on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We will turn
Diggity
it over
is
to
one
Hawthorne
of the most
to take
Canadian
us through
people here,
launch
but Woozle's
at
here too. So
7:27 this evening Eastern Time.
I can't
John?
just go through complimenting everybody. I got to throw a few
Thanks,
pieces of
Marie.
shit out on my friends.
As Marie mentioned, everything is looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon. It's going to come at 27 minutes and 17 seconds
Perm is
after the
one
hour,
of the most
just a little
genuine,
under 15
honest,
minutes
and
from
likable
now.
people I know.
We
He is
began
one of the most
propellant loading on
trustworthy and
Falcon
noble
9 on
individuals
time
I
at
know.
T-minus
There, you want to
35
record that?
minutes.
Go ahead and clip it.
You may have heard earlier the call out. The fuel is completely loaded on the second stage, so the RP1 kerosene fuel is complete. We also got the start right on time 2 minutes ago of liquid oxygen loading onto the second stage.
Stop it! I'm still
On the
pretending to be
first
mad
stage
at
that
you.
You can see with the white plumes coming off of it, fuel loading is continuing. We're about half complete with fuel load. That'll finish in 8
T-minus
minutes.
14 minutes, 10 seconds.
Now, densified oxygen, the liquid oxygen,
It's
continues
interesting
to load
because
on the
Archie and
first stage.
Permanu have a
That'll
common
come
background
down
in
and
profession.
finish about T-minus 3 minutes. And then, as I mentioned,
We all
the second
came together as a
stage has
community
just
through
begun liquid
different
oxygen
things. It
loading
doesn't make me
just
mushy.
2.5 minutes
Not
ago.
so much of a
that
jerk.
will continue all the way down to T-minus 2 minutes.
I do love space. I do
Now,
love
currently,
watching. I love
Eastern
watching
Range
launches
is go.
because they are
Everything
the
continues to
cool-looking
look
part
good.
of space.
And the weather, as
But
we said, has continued
I love
to
seeing what they
cooperate.
do on the
You can
station.
talk about it. You can't do much about it. But tonight, it looks like all conditions are good.
There it is.
on
Thanks,
the weather.
Berlin.
And finally, Dragon. The Dragon mission director and team, they are reporting no issues. They've completed the communication checkouts.
Weather
early in
still
the
looks
countdown.
good.
You can see the
Downrange
crew access arm
good.
is retracted
Range is
away.
clear
What you have
and
left now is
green.
just the strong back alongside of Dragon. You can see on your monitors. We have armed the launch escape system. The crew is strapped in and they are ready to go. Their next major event's coming up at T-minus 10 minutes. They're going to get final instructions relayed to them.
Sometime
The
soon. I
crew
haven't seen
displays
Fulfillment
will
in a
be
while.
configured for launch, and that
Luke
allows the
Besson
crew
wrote
to
that
get
film when he was
insight
14,
into how
or at least came
launch
up with
is
a skeleton
proceeding
for
and
it.
provides constant updates on vehicle health to the crew that you can see on the right-hand side of the monitor. The crew will also at that time close their visors in preparation for launch.
Visors are already
Now,
down,
at
John.
T-minus 5 minutes will be in terminal count.
They've been down
and
since
Dragon
they
will
put
transition
the
to its internal
launch escape system
battery
arm
power.
on.
We'll hear continued call-outs
Yep,
on the countdown
14.
net as we get close to 0 and to liftoff. But right now, 12.5 minutes to go, everything looking good. Leah and I will be commenting, but we're going to let you listen into a lot of the discussion and just enjoy the last 12 minutes of the countdown as we head for liftoff again, 27 minutes, 17 seconds after the hour.
That's right, John. It's so exciting. Only 12 minutes, 13 seconds until liftoff now. And just some things that you can look for, especially upon ascent. You'll be hearing some performance calls as we get into the final countdown and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers. They're reporting the trajectory, the speed, the booster performance, and some of the key milestones for Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon
we are
on the way
about
uphill.
7 minutes away
It's
from
about a
Dragon
9-minute
transitioning
ride
to internal
orbit,
power,
and a few minutes after
and
that
about
is when
7.5
you'll see
minutes
Crew
away from the
Dragon
strong back
separate
retraction.
from the second stage and begin
And about a
flying
minute after
free
that,
on
it's about
its
8 minutes
own.
from now, is the
Some of those other calls
AFT,
you'll
which is
hear
the
upon
automatic
liftoff are
flight
number
termination
and
system.
letter combinations.
That is the
These mark different
capsule's
abort
ability to
zones
determine if
throughout
they
the
need to
flight.
use the
The
LES.
first two are
That'll be turned
1A
on.
and 1B. This signifies they're in the first stage, and that will last until they're up to the very north of North Carolina. The next are 2A,
you might be able to see
2E, or 2 Echo. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. That lasts from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. There's also a spot we want to avoid in the northern Atlantic, and so you might hear the call Shannon or forward to Shannon. Of course, that's not to be confused with our crew member Shannon Walker today, but that actually refers to Shannon, Ireland. It means they would target off the coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and needed to abort. But that next call out we're
Okay, did you hear that?
to the crew
Ireland,
should
yeah,
come up
there
at
it is,
T-minus
represent.
10 minutes that the crew displays. Those 3 panels in front of our astronauts will be configured for launch. Now just 10 minutes and 35 seconds to go until liftoff. also,
always
as John
around.
and I mentioned, that stage 2 fuel load is complete. Stage 1 is at about 90%.
T minus 10 minutes,
Liquid
15
oxygen load
seconds.
on the second
Yeah, he's
stage
been
is about
lurking. I mean, I
40%,
know I
and
play
on the
video
first
games and people's
stage,
streams.
about
I watch and hang out,
85%.
but I'm also doing other stuff. I know he's playing Valhalla. Appreciate everyone who's being here, folding their laundry and listening, paying full attention, doing 5 things at once.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
That was a T minus 10 call to turn all the monitors over for launch config.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. Displays are configured for launch.
Feels like this is gonna go.
Copy, Resilience.
Now you're
We're
knitting.
honored to have you as our crew as we begin operational missions to the ISS. Have an amazing trip and know that we are all for one.
Thanks, Jay. And to all the people at NASA and SpaceX, by working together through these difficult times, you've inspired the nation, the world, and in no small part, the name of this incredible vehicle, Resilience. And now it's time for us to
Good name
do
for
our
it.
part, Crew One for All.
Copy all. Thanks, Hopper.
That was the voice of Commander Mike Hopkins.
Minus 9
confirming
minutes.
those crew displays are configured. And that T minus 10 minutes was another check for the Falcon 9 launch commit criteria. It was checked by some computers. It was the last check of a wide variety of the Falcon system data to make sure we are go. From here on,
Remember
we
that
continue the
DM2
countdown
aborted
until
with about
T-minus
17
7
minutes left.
when the pre-valves open.
They're starting. They haven't had a valve problem, which is what has caused ULA some issues lately. They don't have the same ignition system that ULA has had. They're within a confidence window at this point. The weather was the concern here. Technical issues they've worked through. The remaining things that need to happen here are largely automated.
Isolated by valves that are
The only things that need to be done that are not automated at this point are the Merlin vacuum engine igniter purge, which will happen 3 minutes prior to launch.
That'll allow us to begin.
Flight computer will begin its final pre-launch checks at 7:26 and 17 seconds, about a minute prior to flight. The prop tanks will begin automated pressurization. SpaceX launch director relinquishes all control of launch about 40 seconds before launch.
For the liquid oxygen.
A lot of the things that need to be happening, if they're going to be terminated, they're going to be terminated by an automated system at this
and
point.
turn into gas, something you want to avoid on a turbo pump.
7 minutes and 40 seconds now to lift off.
We've been hanging out here since about 3:30, 4 hours. For those of you who've been here the whole way, appreciate your time, attention. Everyone's gotten up and come back. We're within 7.5 minutes now, so probably time to get whatever last snack you want, make your last best restroom run. We're going to be on the clock here for about the next 20 minutes, assuming this thing lifts off, until the nose cone opens. No, we're not going to stay on the air for a 27-hour trip to the ISS, but it will take them 27 hours. 11 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, estimated. They might get there a little bit early, depending on the efficiency of the burns. But tomorrow night, 11 p.m. Eastern Time is when they are scheduled to dock.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
And there's the call out. Stage 1 engine chill has started. Indicates that we are opening the pre-valves. Liquid
About a
oxygen
minute
now
late.
beginning to flow slowly through the turbo pumps on the Merlin 1D first stage engine.
So the engine chill has to happen so that the same temperature or similar temperature of the pressurized fuel is the temperature of the engine, so that the turbo pump, what pumps the fuel through the engine, doesn't change the temperature of the fuel so dramatically that it causes that change in pressurization that we're concerned about.
2 minutes prior to liftoff on the second
So the
stage.
temperature of the engine has to match or be close to the temperature of the fuel. So that first stage engine burn, those 9 engines on the bottom,
Standing by for that
have to be
fuel
chilled.
call.
Stage 1 fuel load is complete.
S1 fuel load
Okay,
complete.
right on time, and a great view of Dragon. Sitting on top of
Actually
the Falcon
about
9 as
3
we
minutes ahead of
continue to
schedule.
load liquid oxygen onto both the first and second
So if
stages.
S1 fuel load is done,
RP1 kerosene
that should be the
fuel is
call
now
for
completely
the
loaded
strong
on
back
both
to pivot
stage
back,
1
but they have to
and
make sure the
stage
MVAC
2.
engine igniter
All
purge is
continues
done,
to go well, just under
which is the
6
second
minutes to launch.
stage engine, the vacuum engine on the second stage. And there's a difference between a vacuum engine and a pressure
In
at
about
sea
30
level or an
seconds,
earth
we'll enter
pressure
terminal
engine.
count, and Dragon's onboard computers will take control of the vehicle. Both fuel on first and second stage is complete, and liquid oxygen loading continues.
We are go,
The second stage
Nadeko.
at about
We are waiting
80%.
for the final
First stage
launch
at
director verify go for
95%.
launch, which will
Something else
happen
you might
45
note is
seconds
water
prior to
rushing the
launch.
pad shortly before liftoff. That's to suppress the sound and keep any sound
Yeah,
from
it would
imparting
be
a
an
load
automated
on
abort at
Crew
this
Dragon
point.
as
The
it
weather
prepares to lift off.
wouldn't be. If they were going to abort for weather, they'd have done it by now.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count. Dragon is on internal power. Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurized.
All right, so to avoid anything else coming in, you follow or host or resub from now until about 20 minutes from now, you're not going to see it.
And now we'll be looking for a
Turning all that
major
off and prep for
milestone
launch.
before we launch today. That'll be the strong back retract. John, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
What's the percentage of setup that's not reusable?
1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff.
What are they doing?
Return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
That is audio that should be coming in. Oh, someone played Return to Flight. There it is. I was like, what is that, Nadeko? So the capsule is reusable, but the service section right below it is not reusable, which is the thing that has the guiding fins. And then the S2 is not reusable. So there's basically that 30% in the middle that's not reusable. But then the entire S1 and all 9 engines are. So effectively, the S2 fuselage, fuel tanks, turbo pump, and the engine, and then the service section of the capsule, which is the black and white section on your screen now. So this section is not reusable.
And at T-minus 3 minutes, we'll
Right now, we're waiting for the retract. And there you can see the strong back is beginning to move away from
so
the
you'll see right here, strong back is starting to pull away. It's not going to go back very far.
And it looks like we are just about into the required pre-launch position, just a couple degrees away from the Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule.
1.7 degrees
Right now, T-minus
difference
3
from
minutes,
where
8
it was,
seconds.
according
Everything
to
continues
the
to be
flight
go
plan checklist.
on Dragon and Falcon 9.
There are latch pins at the bottom that hold it, that fire off right before launch. It's not freestanding. There's also some umbilicals that are still attached.
currently standing.
Dragon is in terminal count.
So yes, they do. Those are the fairing
Dragon
covers
is in terminal count.
for
We are
a
standing by
non-crewed
to
payload.
the
Those are not
stage
present
one.
here. They would
Liquid
normally be
oxygen
taking up the
loading is
space
complete.
from the top
Stage
of
two
S2 to the
complete.
top of where the
And there
nose
we
is
have
here,
it, and
but
stage
those
two
aren't
should
present here
finish
because there is no
shortly
cargo to
after,
cover.
About 2 minutes prior to liftoff.
So now the last major event.
Unlike the
is
Atlas
finish
V
liquid
launch we watched the
oxygen
night where there
loading
were
on stage
fairings
2.
covering the Centaur upper
Wraps up
stage.
at about T-minus 2 minutes. Then at about T-minus a minute and a half, we have to drain back and vent down the liquid line that goes up the strong back alongside the Falcon 9. If you see a large white cloud about midway down around the rocket, that's normal. That's again just the gaseous oxygen hitting the warm, moist Florida air.
Warm, moist Florida air. Yeah, so there's no mystery out in the Atlantic recovering anything tonight. The only thing they'll get back is the S1. T-minus 1 minute, 45 seconds to launch.
Dragon is in auto idle.
And good calls that stage 2 liquid oxygen load is complete. That means we have full fuel.
Good, Barnum. Thank you for the follow. Welcome in as we get close to launch here.
And we're full of
Sorry for those days that I wrecked you in WreckFest. 1 minute, 27 seconds to launch of Crew 1.
First and second stage as well. Now just a minute and 20 seconds until liftoff today. And as you can hear those sounds, like Soichi Noguchi said, the vehicle is alive. Coming up in 10 seconds, we'll look to hear that Dragon is in countdown and Falcon 9 is in startup.
There went the chills for me. Got the goosebumps now. 1 minute.
Dragon is in countdown. FDS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup.
Annie, what's going on?
50 seconds now until liftoff.
I think
that FTS
young
you heard is
person,
flight
Dragon,
termination.
SpaceX, go for launch.
that's the launch director call at T-minus 45 seconds from SpaceX for go for launch. Pretty much everything is
Go for launch
go
and
and
at
unautomated
37
right now.
seconds, the International Space Station flying over Kennedy Space Center.
Crew 1 for all.
Crew Dragon poised to go catch it.
Here we go. Indeed, Gilly.
20 seconds till liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. Falcon 9 is configured for flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
And resilience rises.
Look at her go.
Contains humanity when we explore as one for all.
M1E propulsion is nominal.
That's the word we want to hear. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds, 549 kilometers per hour velocity, 2.62 kilometers altitude.
Stage 1 is preparing to throttle down.
Throttle down
This is in
due to
preparation for
approaching max Q.
which is maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Stage 1, throttle down.
There's that call out for throttle down.
Power and telemetry continue to be nominal for the vehicle, now traveling at 260
Max Q should be at 728.15, which we're past.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Mach 1.
There's that call out. The Falcon 9 is supersonic.
It's
and we
about
will be
4
passing through
Gs.
Max Q here shortly, the largest structural load during ascent.
Max Q.
And there's that call out. That Falcon has passed through.
So they're going to start
now.
throttling the engine back up.
And we've just entered Stage 1 Bravo abort mode. That's going to take them through the end of the first stage burning just before second stage activates
So
off
pretty
the
at
coast
night.
of North Carolina.
Exhaust contrail coming off of that thing. It's going to make for some great time-lapse photos. This thing, look at the skies look really clear.
T plus 1 minute and 40 seconds into flight. Dragon and Falcon
2,600 kilometers per hour velocity, 28 kilometers altitude.
That call that MVAC chill is underway.
That's the Merlin vacuum engine being chilled in flight so that it is getting ready for its fuel once the S1 separation happens.
Out of MVAC chilling, similar to what we saw in the first stage Merlin engines, the second stage engine being prepared for its ignition coming up in just over 30 seconds from now. We're a half a minute away from 3 quick events in rapid succession.
Yeah, it'll be S1 set, S2 engine light.
And then shut down. We're going to get stage separation.
Stage 1, throttle down.
And then ignition of the second stage engine. We've begun the throttle down in preparation for stage separation.
I love the internal cameras they have. SpaceX does such a great job of presenting their launches.
And we have
S1 engine shutdown.
Stage separation confirmed.
There's your separation. Your vacuum engine starting to light on the right-hand side.
There goes that MVAC engine. Stage 2. Crew
Went from
1
cold
is
to
now
a
on their way
fireball
to
in
the
like
International
6
Space
seconds.
Station.
We endure this loss and learn from it.
Yep, 6 million meters
On the
per
right side of your
hour.
screen, you see stage 2 continuing
Grid
to
fins coming
burn.
out on the left-hand
Over
side
on
to help guide the
left-hand
S1
side
down
is
to Of Course I
stage
Still
1
Love You, which is
preparing
the
for
drone
its
ship out in the
return to
Atlantic. S2 burn continues.
Currently on the left side, you can't make out much. It's a couple hours after sunset.
Seco 1 will be at about
But the grid fins have
7:36.
deployed on the first stage.
The first stage
is now
landing re-entry
unpowered,
burn will
but
be
with the
about the
velocity
same
it had,
time.
It continues to coast up to an apogee.
And the first
before it
stage
begins
landing
to
will be
descend
about 30
fast
seconds
into
later.
Earth's atmosphere. Now, as we watch, maybe we'll see the lights of Florida or the eastern seaboard in the background, but otherwise, there's not going to be much to see.
Yep, it's coming down over the
On
ocean.
the right-hand side,
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
you can hear the call out. Trajectory is
I don't believe
nominal.
those were loose wires, Rocket.
And we've heard the call out Bermuda. That means Bermuda ground station has the signals from the second stage of the Dragon.
I did see the 2 items you were talking about curling back from the engine, but there's nothing that attaches to the exterior of the nozzle.
We're still continuing as stage 2 burns to listen for those abort zones. We are now in 2A through 2E to Echo, taking us up over the northern Atlantic.
Okay, there's also no cables that attach to the exterior of the cone. The nozzle doesn't have anything
Now
on
you
its
can see the
outside. It's all
second stage
attached to the
engine
turbo pump up right in
glowing
this
with the
area right here.
standard, red
There's nothing that
we
actually
come
connects
to
down here
see
like
over
that.
all these
I'm not
missions
sure what it was,
indicates
but it wasn't a
everything's
wire
looking
or a
good.
cable.
Power on the MVAC-D engine continues to run at 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of outer space.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
And trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Coming up on 10,000 kilometers per hour
From the crew, acknowledging
at an
we have a
altitude of
nominal
193
Dragon
kilometers.
made it to the Falcon 9 second stage, heading into the low Earth orbit, where Dragon will then separate and begin its trip the rest of the way to the space station.
7:33 and 2 seconds.
We'll be looking for SECO, second stage engine cutoff, coming up at 8 minutes and 48 seconds after launch
So in
today.
about
so about
3
3.5
minutes, 20
from
seconds.
now, Dragon and Falcon 9 second stage.
Nadeko here doing the metric conversion for those of us in the
2,979
United
meters
States.
per second.
Now, currently, the first stage
Yep,
has
10
begun its
megameters per
descent.
hour.
It is through apogee. It's beginning to come back down, where it coming up in another
it's
couple
mega,
of minutes, we will have the entry burn, where we begin to slow down the first stage.
I don't use metric enough.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another call out.
All good
another
calls.
nominal
Let's go ahead and
trajectory, just
get
what we love to hear.
this out of the
That
way of
voice
your
you're
view.
hearing on board Dragon, that's Commander Mike Hopkins speaking for our 4-person crew as they continue their journey now 6 minutes and 12 seconds after liftoff.
Almost.
Trajectory still nominal.
And Leah, you can see on the indicator
We're at T plus 6
altitude,
minutes and 30-ish
201
seconds.
kilometers. We're now beginning to essentially level out and pick up velocity.
Yep, so
to
they
us
get high and
into
then they
low Earth
get
orbit.
parallel and then they just pick up speed to outrun Earth's gravity.
We're a little under 1 minute from
Welcome
the
in, Doc.
ignition for the entry burn on first stage.
And we're about 2 minutes away.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Sweet. Glad you got to see it.
Great
Had an issue with
news.
hatch
Now
closure,
7
but they
minutes
got
after
through it
launch,
and nothing
second
else.
Stage engine continues to burn. Everything
Yep,
looking
orbit
good.
equals always falling, always
And we'll
missing.
see
That's
that
a great way to
continue
think about it.
burn for another 1 minute and about 38 seconds.
Falling so fast, you always miss.
Right now on stage 2, the crew's getting about a little more than 2.5 G's.
10,000 miles per
acceleration.
hour is current speed and
First
climbing.
stage
Thank you,
preparing to
Nadeko.
ignite for the entry
Stage 2
burn.
FTS is saved.
On your left now is the first entry burn for S1. The grid fins are out. You
And
will
we've
not
got
see much
ignition
just
of
because
the
it's landing
entry
over the
burn,
ocean.
Center engine, followed by the other 2 restart engines. First stage now getting ready to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is about a 29-second burn, and it's designed to slow the vehicle way down. We're going to shed about 70% of the velocity of that dropping first stage.
So
by the time
we're about
this
2 minutes
landing
away
burn
from SECO,
completes.
a minute and a half away from SECO, and that
I should say by the
minute
time
50
the
seconds
entry
away
burn
from landing.
completes, which is now over. First stage on target for the drone ship
Wow,
in the
per-
Atlantic Ocean. Meanwhile, we're watching second stage getting close to getting into orbit.
That's right. We've got about 30
Stage
seconds
2 internal
more.
guidance.
And now just about 20 seconds more of stage 2 continuing to burn until we see second stage engine cut off, or SECO. We'll coast for a few minutes afterward to allow the rates in motion to...
Roger,
there-
Shannon.
Shannon,
that
they
call
said
for
Shannon. They mean
That's
Ireland,
Shannon,
Case.
Ireland, an abort zone, but it looks like we continue smoothly to orbit today.
MVAC shutdown.
Merlin vacuum engine shutdown. That's SECO.
And we've got shutdown of the second stage engine on time.
All right, first landing burn.
Dragon SpaceX
First stage landing burn coming up.
orb insertion.
Launch escape system is disarmed.
And SpaceX copies.
Yep, but if you understood how they're going to get there,
Nominal
they'll
orbit insertion.
continue to increase. They'll burn
right, John.
multiple
Nominal
times to
orbit
increase their
insertion, as
altitude
we
relative to
mentioned,
Earth to get there.
Stage 2.
They're not going
looks like
directly
it's
to the
matching on
same
stage
altitude
1.
relative to Earth that ISS is at. They have to come in under it and then get into the safety zone. Yep, orbital transitions, Hohmann transitions, effectively.
And I believe we've had a touchdown.
There
on
she
the
is,
drone
on,
ship.
of course, I Still Love You,
Stage
upright.
1 has touched down on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. But now the more important news, second stage is in orbit, right where we want, right on time. And we're getting ready for our next major activity, which will be Dragon spacecraft separation.
Yep, Dragon spacecraft separation from S2 will come up, and then we will get the nose code sequence
Currently
opening.
on the second stage, we are
Yep, every time they land one, it's just like,
venting
what?
pressure, purging
How?
the engine out, making sure
Manny,
everything is
Mud's in the other
quiet
window.
in preparation.
Take a look. That's inside Crew Dragon right now. Our Crew 1 crew now coasting in low Earth orbit, still attached to that second stage. In just a couple of minutes, we should see that second stage separate, and Crew Dragon will be flying free.
That should be at 7:39 and 20 seconds, about a minute from now. Get second stage separation. I'm going to get a window and a key next to my name.
At 27,000 kilometers an hour.
T plus 11 minutes.
And we're T plus 11 minutes since liftoff today, waiting on that second stage separation. But as you can see, our astronauts from left to right, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, and Soichi Noguchi.
Yep.
Now on their way to the International Space Station. First,
Velocity in space is all relative.
Acquisition of signal in Newfoundland.
Newfoundland has a acquisition of signal.
And that call out, acquisition of signal in Newfoundland. That
They've
means
been at
the
0G
Newfoundland
for a
ground
while.
Station is now receiving telemetry from Dragon. This view inside Mission Control Hawthorne. Teams continuing to monitor the vehicle, now traveling at almost 27,000 kilometers an hour.
Yep. What's speed of light is a constant? Yep.
Dragon separation.
Yeah, their relative acceleration to the universe around them is basically zero. For the environment around them. So there's S2 set. Crew Dragon
separation confirmed.
Flying free.
You can see that second
Soros sub, what's
Crew
up?
Dragon leaving it
Welcome
behind.
in. We are watching the second stage separate from Crew Dragon. Crew 1, the
Now
first
12 minutes,
rotational
25
flight of
seconds
the
into today's flight.
Dragon
Our
2
next thing
spacecraft
we'll be
for
looking
NASA
for
with
is nose
4
cone
astronauts
deploy.
aboard. It's
Our hooks will
historic.
start to
The
open
first time
on the
4
nose cone and
astronauts
reveal
have
those
flown from Earth in a
forward
capsule.
thrusters underneath.
They're on the way to the ISS. That thing will burn up. That'll burn up. Its trajectory is almost parallel. So as it falls away, Earth will grab it because it has nothing. It doesn't have enough mass to continue its forward momentum. Its inertia is not enough. It'll fall back to Earth, but its angle is so sharp, it'll just basically hit right off the top of the Earth, and it will burn itself up. Pete, what's up? Welcome in.
13 minutes into today's mission, the view on the right-hand side of your screen
We
coming
have
from Crew Dragon.
one more
We have that
major
short
milestone
look
for
at
the mission,
second
which is the
stage.
nose
As
cone
it
open, which
departed,
will
that second
expose
stage
the
will
telemetry
burn up
systems for Crew
upon
Dragon,
entry into Earth's atmosphere.
or Resilience, which is what the capsule's name is, as it is now flying free. That will basically enable the auto guidance to the International Space Station, which will be docked with tomorrow night, 11 p.m. We have one thing we have to do as a community, though, before we call our night here as well.
Dragon SpaceX, we see nominal service section Draco checkouts and the unifier activation.
So that what they did right there is they're firing not the Super Dracos, the standard Dracos, the maneuvering thrusters, the 6 nozzles you saw on the front of the demo that they had behind the webcast earlier. They're making sure that that fired and was
Information
effective.
from teams on the ground and the crew, you can see them monitoring those 3
It is your
display
people.
panels, monitoring their journey to the International Space Station and where they are in the world right now, or over the world, I should say.
So we will wait for that nose cone deploy, which will take a few minutes because effectively the bolts have to, the hooks have to unscrew themselves. Thank you for the sub, Pete. I'm going to turn those things back on now that we're in space.
Well, we're in 14 minutes, 25 seconds since it was a great liftoff, everything happened. We had a into low Earth orbit. You saw Dragon separate. We got the Draco checkouts were good. And right now we're hearing the nose cone hooks are opening up. Everything is happening right per the procedure.
There we go.
And we've got Crew 1 successfully on orbit.
So the thing we've got to do as a community,
counterparts at Kennedy Space Center.
visors are up
Marie,
on
how is
the
that launch
craft.
for you all there on the
We are going
ground?
to start closing things
Oh
down
my
here.
gosh, John, it just
But
took our
here we
breath
go.
away. I mean, we could just turn right around.
Let me
in
go
our
ahead and
seats watch.
pull this
We
down
got up
so that we can do
away
this.
from
I'll
the
take my
desk
headset
to
off so I
get
don't
a
hear
better
anything you're
look.
saying.
And then we actually could see the booster coming back down.
Yeah, that was outstanding. Outstanding. And
Oh,
I don't even know
watch
what to
the
say.
magic disappear,
High
kids.
five. We're like high-fiving through the shield here.
So you will see on this wall behind me,
My
if
daughter
I get a little bit
liftoff
more
was
centered
just-
here,
I'm
is
emotional.
this patch wall that represents
seeing that. And
the
we
missions we've
went on the
watched
first
together.
attempt. How often does that happen? in US
There are
space
quite a
flight?
few of them up there,
Very
but you'll notice that
happy,
there's a space
it has
reserved
been a long
between
day,
the
but
DM2 patch and the
just to be able
DM1
to
patch right
stand
above
there and
the
actually
NASA
feel the
meatball.
rocket
I'm going to go up
pounding
there
the air around you was
and
just-
get
it was just
that
incredible.
patch
And then
placed.
looking at the
It
light
is
too long,
this
I couldn't see
patch,
the MVAC ignition, so
the mission we just watched.
And then the views inside the capsule too, with the four of them, you know,
Yeah.
looking kind of mellow, but you can see Victor's kind of letting his arms do a little bit of the floating
Yeah.
thing. I bet he cannot wait to
Yeah.
get out of his seat.
Well, he's going to get a chance to
Yeah.
here shortly. So he's officially on his way on his first space flight.
So
Incredible.
Victor, Mike, Shannon,
There will
and
be no
Soichi are
sleep
now on
tonight.
course to
The
arrive
wild
at the
shouts and
International Space
frantic
Station
drumming
just
will see to
tomorrow,
that.
Monday, November 16th.
There she is,
around 11 p.m.
up there with
Eastern
all the other
time.
missions we've
And
watched.
we're going to stay live
There's
on air for
DM2,
continuous live coverage along their entire
DM1.
ride to station.
Don't Stop Me
Though
Now,
our coverage here at Kennedy
Perseverance,
Space Center will
New
conclude,
Santara Saw
we're
2,
going
which
to
was
turn
the
it
first
over to
mission
the
we ever
teams in
launched
Hawthorne
together.
and Houston to
The
take us through
expedition
the
patches
next
for the
phases
various times
of the
we've gone to
Crew 1
ISS as a
mission,
community.
all the way through hatch opening
Three
and a welcome
patches
ceremony for the
memorializing
crew. For
astronauts
those
who've
of
given
you
their
watching
lives.
online
There's other ones
via
up there that we will
YouTube, take
replace
a
over
look at the
time, but that's the
description
one
below
and
the
that's where it's
video.
going right now.
There you'll find the new link for our Crew 1 rendezvous phase, and we'll be continuing live coverage at that new location shortly.
Behold
But if you're
my
watching
stuff,
on NASA
indeed.
TV, like my parents, you won't notice a thing, and your coverage will continue.
That's right. And as you follow along, we also invite
We're going to go
you
ahead and
tune
lower
into
their
a
volume
full
here because the cone, the nose cone is deploying or opening. And we are going to bring an end to things tonight. Yep, haul of all of my belongings with a chroma key. So thank you all for hanging out tonight. Let's go back over here. Okay, go all the way up. That's good enough, I think. Yep. Timmy, what's up, man? Oh, I don't need to have that info scroll up anymore. So we're in the end of the broadcast here, where we have watched Crew 1 make it to orbit, separate from its second stage, and tomorrow night, 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, we will watch docking. The whole barge crew is here. So we do this for those of you that are rolling in here kind of late at the end of things here. We watch major rocket launches together. Appreciate the barge crew coming in and saying hi. I'm going to go ahead and cover that up because they're just doing recaps now. And I can go ahead and kill out of that window. We are in a good orbit. There will be several burns to home and transfer to where the ISS is tomorrow night. And then they'll enter the safe zone. And then they'll dock. And that's actually pretty cool to watch from Crew Dragon because the cameras are great and the telemetry information is good. But we've been going for a while. 4 hours and 25 minutes since we started watching this thing. I appreciate you all hanging out. Good night, Rocket. I know you got to go to bed. You've been here all day. Crewed missions are not something that come around all that often. So, if you'd like to continue watching, I am going to hand you back off to Ozzy in space. He is likely going to continue coverage. He's still going strong with it. And we will be back tomorrow night. The other night we did go raid Ozzy. A couple of you guys hung out. Ozzy also likes space stuff, hence his name Ozzy in Space. We will see you guys tomorrow night, 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will watch the docking together for those of you that are awake at that time, and we'll have the recording up on YouTube for those of you that can't be up that late. Ozzy is an Aussie? No, Ozzy is a Minnesotan. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching with us tonight. I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for being here, Berlin. And I will talk to you all later.
Be excellent to each other.